Okay, so we're reconvening the open session part of the special meeting, and could council report out of the closed session?
No reportable actions, Mr. President.
Thank you. So the special meeting is adjourned, and we will call to order the regular meeting of the Granada Community Service District Board of Directors for Thursday, July 19th, 2018. Roll call, please.
President Leonard Warren.
Present.
Vice President Barbara Dye.
Here.
Director Jim Blanchard.
Here.
Director Matthew Clark.
Present.
Director David Seaton.
Here.
And also on the table is Hope Duffy, our General Manager, and our Legal Counsel, Will Perkins, and I am Julia Candido.
Okay. General public participation. I have one speaker request form for speaking on items not on the agenda. Dale Ross.
I think I know the routine pretty well. Dale Ross, I live in El Granada.
You know the 3-minute part?
Yeah, I know about the 3-minute part. So it's going to be very short. I'll have a handout that I'll give around later, but rather than have eyes on that and so forth. So I made, a week ago, an astonishing discovery. So I'm here tonight to report on it. And I want to request that the boards send it along because it's a landscape feature that is enabled by this discovery. And I want to recommend that be passed along to Kikuchi and Kenkel for consideration. So what it is there's a place in the community that happens to be tangent to one of our medians that has that most people think has no running water near it, but in fact, you know something about it. And what it is water. And what revealed what's astonishing about this little trickle of water is that the county Public Works Road Department was out here last week and it's continuing into this week repairing the intersection of Coronado, the road at the intersection of Coronado and Portola. And in the process, I'm walking down through the median there, and I look over and there's no water running. And I said, "What have you done?" And so I got on my high horse and ran over to the construction site.
Are you talking about what you showed me after the Deer Creek walk?
Yeah, that creek. Okay, I call that. So it runs down Portola from two blocks above the Portola medians, and at Francisco and Portola, there's a natural spring that causes water to run year-round down the whole distance, and eventually goes through the burning strip in a ditch, and it goes out towards, somehow it gets out to the surface beach. So I found the foreman, I started talking to him, I said, "Did you destroy the creek? What's going on here? It's all dry here." And he said, "Well, we had to divert the little creek over to the other side where it would actually flow over to Isabella." And I said, "Why is that?" And he says, "Well, we're going to be pouring concrete here and so forth, and we just need to have the time to repair this intersection and so on and so forth."
So is that a temporary diversion?
Yeah. So I said, "Well, where did you divert it?" And they said, "Right up at its source at Francisco." So I hop up there, and sure enough, what they did, and it's in the handout. You see, I had my iPhone with me. I took all sorts of pictures of the construction and so forth. And sure enough, they had diverted all of the water with a garden hose all the way across, and they had a mechanism that kept.
Two hoses.
Two of them. Okay, you saw it too.
Yeah.
Okay. And all the way over to the other side, and they took all the water from that natural spring, and it was so to the other side. So therefore, this down here was all dry. So anyway, then I said, well, this is an opportunity to measure how much water is actually flowing there. And so I went back to my house, which is only a block away from the location. I got a 5-gallon, empty 5-gallon paint can. I run back there, and you'll see the pictures in here. Take my iPhone out, I bring up the stopwatch, and I have a completely empty bucket, and I say, okay, 5 gallons. And I click the stopwatch to start it, and all the time holding the phone and the hose like together, filling the bucket, and I click it when it's finished. And so I'll take guesses as to how many gallons a day comes out of that location and flows unhindered, basically, except for evaporation and some seepage into the soil here and there. It goes all the way on its own out to the surface beach. Take a guess. Try to give a guess. How many gallons a
1,000
day?
gallons a day.
I had said to you when we were coming back from the Explorer hike that I gave a couple weeks ago, that it was at least a gallon a minute. And so the minimum, that minimum turns out to be 1,440 gallons a day.
Wow.
It's 60 hours, 60 minutes in an hour, and 24 hours, and you look up the math, and it's 1,440. Come on, somebody guess.
You're saying it's more than 1,000?
35,000 gallons.
Yeah, yes, very, way high, way high.
I'm gonna stick to my 1,000 gallons a day.
Well.
1,001.
Huh?
1,001.
1,001, no, I
If the price is right, you can't go over.
Somebody told me I had a very strong feeling it was over a gallon a minute. Well, it turns out that on a day basis, it's 2,700, almost 2,700, 13 gallons short of that. 2,700 gallons a day.
So it's a couple of gallons a minute.
Yeah, so it's it takes 2 minutes and 41 seconds to fill a 5-gallon tank, bucket. And so you take that, and that's not 2.4, because you have to convert the 41 seconds to, by dividing by 62 decimal. And it turns out it's a 2.28 or 2.38, something like that. Or 2.68 actually. Anyway, what this does is that, and it also is gravity feed all the way down to where the needing is. So, well, I have a recommendation that this could easily be made into a water feature as part of the landscaping at the top north, and the water could be captured with a flow limiter in it that basically says, we don't want the stormwater to be running into the median. But you could, with very simple implementation, there would be no electricity, no pumps, no storage tanks, just run it in there. For instance, I gave an example here that if we had a small pond, okay, I'm almost done, of 300 square feet of surface, say, and that's about, that's 10 by 30 if you made it lengthy. And the average depth of the pond or pool of water was a half a foot. That would be 150 cubic feet of water. And that works out to be, in terms of gallons, 1,125 gallons. So that 2,700 gallons a day would completely refresh the water in the pond every 10 hours, it works out. And you could even put bioswales at the input and at the output to clean the water coming in and going out, and things of that sort. So here's a little handout describing all this, and I hope you'll see that there's enough work here to make a justification that K&K take a good solid look at this.
Dale, I think, I'm going to ask you to go out there at least monthly and take this measurement.
Oh, this by the way, is midsummer.
Because
Maybe in September
after
we'll-
heavy rains, that little freshette there runs higher.
Oh, yeah.
And at the end of the last drought, it actually dried out.
Yeah, okay, for a brief
Yeah.
period of time, maybe a
Yeah,
few
so,
weeks.
yeah, we would need to know the changes in
So it
volume.
requires more study and then maybe
Yeah.
going back, you're absolutely right. But I think that's the first time I've ever seen it dry, is that drought we had in 2016, I guess.
Yeah, the recent drought, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Isabella drainage through, under the apartment buildings and then through the south end of the Burnham Strip, that also basically stopped some year, I don't remember which year, probably the same year you're talking about.
The other point I'll make is that, and it's in here, is that the water the construction can be done such that there's a hard base to the pool and that it doesn't seep into the soil. It's not intended to do that, because if we do the right thing and let rains and the shade and so forth preserve and plant appropriate trees, we don't have to worry about that. So the water can go back out, when it goes past the pool, back out to the gutter and the soil and go and continue the journey on down to the, through Burnham Strip and so forth. So it's like a system that doesn't require much and it doesn't take much. So anyway, I'll give, you pass these down here, Delia one.
Would the board like to refer this to the advisory committee or keep it at the board level?
That'd be a killer.
So this one maybe we'll keep at the board level?
Well, I should just pass the idea along to
Yeah,
KK and see
we
what
don't
they
need
think.
to, just
Alright.
tell
I'm
them
happy
what's
to do that.
happening and see if they want to
Yeah.
integrate
Should
it.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
So I've got a couple left over here.
I'd like one. Oh,
Anybody in the
Thank you.
audience interested in seeing? Thank you. Here, head for another round.
Oh.
Do that.
we need one more up
I
here.
got it, I got it.
Oh, I gave away.
I got it.
Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dale. I've observed that flow for years and years and have gone up Portola several times trying to find out where it comes from, and it just doesn't seem, all of a sudden, it's not there.
Yeah, it stops right there, Francisco. There's a natural spring right under,
Yeah.
under that intersection.
Yeah, but this is a good idea, a brilliant idea, I think.
Well,
You know, I hadn't really ever thought of it.
Thank you. So as soon as I had the conversation with the construction crew, I said, it set me up.
This will be fascinating.
Cool.
Okay. Good luck. See it happen.
Thanks, Dale.
Thanks, Dale, this is great.
Anyone else who would like to speak on items not on the agenda? Okay, I have the quarterly announcement. Let's see, what is this, the fourth Saturday of every quarter, we have a recycle event on the district property at the foot of Portola, for items that you can't leave curbside to get rid of, and you'd otherwise have to drive up and drop them off at the recycle yard in Pacifica. So, standard thing, I assume we have the information on the website.
It's on all our phones.
So it's 8 to 12, oh, they cut off the last hour this time? Used to be till 1.
Used to be from 9 to 1 and now it's from 8 to 12.
Okay, so 8 to 12 on July 28th, and there's a list of items that are accepted and a list of items that are not accepted, so before going, check the lists.
There's a special shredding event with it as well.
Okay, do you want to comment on that, instead of me trying to,
There's a special shredding of paper event.
recyclable
Ordinary
house-
paper they won't take.
okay,
Special.
recyclable household items only, plus 6 banker boxes of paper for confidential shredding. Okay. Anything else? All right, we'll move to item 1 on the action agenda. Public hearing, consideration of sewer service charge increase and related enacting ordinance in accordance with Articles XIII. Why do we use Roman numerals?
It's the Constitution does.
Oh. That's why Rome fell.
We didn't change it.
Articles 13, C and D of the California Constitution, Prop 218. Okay, what do we have to do to receive the staff report?
So I provided a staff report with backup for the proposed rate increases. So at our May board meeting, your board preliminarily approved increasing our sewer service charge to $460 for fiscal year 2018-19, $520 for 2019-20, and $580 for 2020-21. Since our May meeting, I've also mailed out the Prop 218 notice alerting the customers to the proposed rate increases. We received 6 letters of protest. There's 5 in your packet, and we handed out one that we received this week. So that does not meet the threshold of half the ratepayers in the district protesting the rate increase. As part of my report here, we've attached the following documents: our ordinance number 172, which enacts the proposed sewer service charge, a copy of the Prop 218 notice we mailed to all the ratepayers, probably the most important document we have here, which is a sewer service charge rate evaluation report prepared by Wilson Engineering, an outside independent engineering company. Incorporated in that, as well as our district's 5-year operating and capital improvement projects. And then I give some background of our other CIP projects, which are replacing aging sewer mains in the district. And then finally, because much of this increase is driven by increases in SAM's operation, maintenance, and capital costs, I've attached pertinent sections from the March 2017 Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side 5-year infrastructure plan, and also from their May 2018 20-year capital improvement program. So a lot of the increases we're seeing here are driven by increases in costs at SAM on an operational level. Their operations increase were 25% for 17-18, proposed to be another 18% for 18-19. So that's one of the main reasons we've got behind these proposed increases. So that's kind of our administrative record for the proposed increase. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions or comments.
Just out of curiosity, and I don't want to try and do the arithmetic in my head on camera, but if we hadn't had 6 years of no increase, suppose the 6 years where there was no increase, it was 3% a year.
Yeah, it's 2.5.
Where would we end up with in the compared to the 3rd year of this rate increase?
If we incorporated this, since we were $365 in ERU 14 years ago, it basically averages out to a 2.5% increase per year. So if we had been doing slow incremental increases, it'd be keeping up with the cost of living, basically.
So you're saying that would essentially
It would
be in the same ballpark as the 3rd year?
3 years from now to the $580 per year, yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured, but I didn't do the math. So, yeah, I said
I did it previously, I didn't do it in my head.
I said we should have done this last year, remember?
Yeah. Well, the ratepayers are thanking me, so.
No, because they're going to end up paying essentially the same amount. Okay, so we will open the public hearing, and I'll ask for public comment and final call for protests. Okay. I need a motion to close the public hearing?
No, you can close it yourself.
Okay, so the public hearing is closed. And now the board considers public comment on all written and oral protests.
So just the 6 letters we received that you've all seen. Again,
But I think it's
doesn't-
actually fewer than last time.
It was in the ballpark, it's 5 or 6 generally. One of the letters wasn't even a protest, he said, I understand you're doing a good job, just doesn't like to see rates go up.
Well, we don't like to
Mr.
see
Kennedy,
rates go.
I'd like to comment on Mr. Kennedy's very nice letter,
Yes.
actually, like you said. But he asked for a little more information, and when I read this one, having already seen the bullet points on the first page of your memo, I thought, this is exactly what he wants. So I suggest the next time, and there will be a next time, that we include a little more information of this sort, not don't send out the SAM budget to everyone, but
Right.
you know, throw some actual figures in there and some names or about projects and whatever.
Okay.
And just like this here, it'd be,
Okay,
it's quite explanatory.
okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. So any other,
Yeah, I have a few comments.
Barbara?
So, when this came up, I supported the increase. I think it's something we need to do, but I felt as if I needed to do more to kind of understand where it was all coming from. And actually, I met with Nancy Marsh, and we talked about, both of us, what we'd like to, she's on our Parks Committee and very interested, what we'd like to see. And so, we did some research and looked at this, some of which is duplicative of what is in the report here tonight, but it was helpful to do this myself, so I really understand it. And the question of why do we need an increase? Well, there's really a couple reasons. One is that the costs for SAM have increased so much that the pipeline replacement, which was well over in the millions of dollars, which has made our whole system more reliable and safer and had to be done, is finally done.
SAM system.
SAM system.
Well,
I'm still talking
well,
about SAM now.
There's one more segment.
I know, I understand that, yes. But there is another piece that needs yet to be done. That the SAM operating costs have gone up significantly. It's not a huge amount, but we do have increased legal fees now because of the lawsuit by Half Moon Bay. And it seems that SAM is finally tackling more of the deferred maintenance on their facilities that needed to be taken care of. So all those things seem good and benefit the people who live here. For GCSD, there's a report here on the capital improvements needed for our own system within El Granada. Most of these sewers were put in, a lot of them in 1920. I mean, nothing lasts forever. And as I read this document, there were things that needed to be repaired that were identified in 2007 when they did an exhaustive review that still have not been done. And that, after talking to Chuck, it's partly because the Medio Creek bypass, which is where the bridge was coming out by, down by the ocean, has cost about $1 million, and they had to take the sewer line off that and come up with an alternative to pump the sewage up and over because there was a question. I guess the bridge is going to be rebuilt, but this is an expensive project that needed to get done. And then we still have all the various deferred maintenance on the lines within El Granada that also need to get done. For the last few years, this entity has been operating essentially off the difference between the revenues and the costs has been covered by reducing the reserves. And the reserves were pretty high when this all started. And they've, we've been using them to cover the difference. And so the recommendation is that the reserves be maintained at 2.5 million. And we're not quite there yet, but we need to have additional revenue to do the work that needs to be done to keep the system running properly and to take good care of it. So for all those reasons, it seems as if this increase is really warranted right now. The other piece that I was interested in, and is we got a chart from our general manager tonight showing, I guess these are the monthly costs per district, but I did some internet research on this. I tried to figure out what other places are charging, because I really wanted to know. It's a little hard to do because there are a number of places that have fixed fees like we do. We charge a flat rate per year for every residential place. Others do it by the usage, the water use. So the numbers that I was able to come up with were my best effort to come up with them. But when you look at it, at the rates, I was really surprised because we are the lowest that we were able to come up with in all of San Mateo County. And many of the districts are at least double for a residential facility for what is charged now and even what will be charged after these increases. So Burlingame, it's about $1,600 a year. Crystal Springs, $1,350. East Palo Alto is low at $575, but still more than we've been charging. Foster City, $783, Half Moon Bay, $840, and these, again, these are the best efforts at coming up with the numbers. A lot of times they're a couple years out of date, but I figure if they're old numbers, it hasn't gone down. So the comparison is still fair.
The way I have looked at it before is, in order to compare, is you find out what the average residential
Right,
charge
and I
is.
used that, I did that, but, you know, it's a little tricky.
Yeah.
And then Half Moon Bay is at $840.
Now, is that their average, or?
That was their 2017, 28, yes, that's because they
Because they
use
also
the,
have a minimum.
right, they use the amount of water, but then there's sort of a generally accepted what is a standard residential use, so. And then Montera is at 810, Pacifica's almost 700, Redwood City 900, West Bay Sanitary District, which is Millbrae, is at 973. South San Francisco and San Bruno is at 553, and San Mateo is 1,034. So after looking at these numbers, again, this is just sort of basic internet research. It seems pretty clear that El Granada is really providing value for the amount that the residents pay for their sewer service. And again, we have to take care of the system, and we have to make these repairs that need to be done because we have an aging system. And then the only other comment I would make, so I'm very supportive of this increase. The only other comment I would make, which is that I think we should think about having ongoing smaller increases rather than let it go for so long and then have to have a big jump.
Yep.
So if we're gonna do our responsibilities to take care of both our systems and make our contributions to SAM, we need to have sufficient revenue for that, but maybe we should think about having ongoing, sort of a standard increase per year that reflects the actual cost of maintaining these districts. So I'm prepared to vote once again in favor of this, but I did a little more work to make sure that I really understood why it was necessary. And now I am very convinced that it is.
Thank you.
So, yeah, and, you know, I'll add, I think I agree totally in terms of the smaller increases. I think that makes a lot more sense, both from justifying it in terms of understanding that versus just these huge spikes and the uncertainty in terms of if that's even enough, or if maybe we need to even raise them more. In terms of the, you know, saying we're the lowest, I think it's a little bit misleading in terms of, you know, looking at, it's so hard to compare, looking at some of these other agencies that are doing water and doing other services. I know we say parks, but really, you know, there hasn't been a big investment in that or any thing to show. I think, in general, even looking at these, you compared them all to San Mateo County agencies, it looks like, and I remember going back to the grand jury report, looking at it, that was one of their main concerns, is when they talk about the cottage industry of sewer districts, a lot of these small San Mateo County agencies, when you compare them outside to other areas in San Jose and the East Bay and some of these other districts, it's they're all across the board much higher. And that was one of the things they were looking at is, you know, why are rates so much higher in San Mateo County, and why are they continuing to increase at such a higher rate, whereas all these other districts aren't seeing that growth rate in increases. So I think that, you know, I think even looking at all these, we have the highest contribution on total revenue from property taxes coming in. So I think you start looking at those things, it's a little misleading just to look at and say we have the lowest, you know, the lowest rates, because that's only one, you know, one small part of the story. I think when you.
But we do have the lowest rates.
But you're just looking at one, if you're taking in contribution for property taxes and all that, that's gonna change the whole, you know, because some of these other agencies aren't
The
looking at
taxpayers
that.
in El Granada are paying less than any other.
If you're just looking at the ERUs, but if you're looking at the whole picture, then this chart's gonna look totally different. Because a lot of these other agencies, some of them have no property taxes, some of them have much less. We have the highest percentage of our property taxes on top of the annual fee that we're paying. So when you take a look at all that,
Well, then,
But
It's gonna
everybody-
change.
Everybody in the county pays the same property tax rates, right?
yeah, and property tax revenues only make up
Yeah.
a maybe 10% of our expenditures. So even if we remove property taxes, I mean, I always say this about budgets. Budgets are just numbers.
Yeah.
You know, if you work
Well, they said
efficiently, or if
policy.
you have an efficient, well, but if you have an efficient staff and you have that thought process, you'll save money. So, I run 3 other districts, my group runs another 3 other districts. Our rates are all in excess of this. I don't like to ever compare rates. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
apples
it's
and
almost,
oranges a
that's what
little
I'm
bit.
getting at.
But I think this board and this district has done a good job in trying to keep rates low. So, and we've got SAM, which is 70% of our costs. So, they're a bigger driver of our rates than anything we do.
I'd also like to point out that most of the highest cost districts in the county are the ones run by the county.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and in terms of the property tax, I think it's important for people to realize that this is not an add-on to the property tax. This is that because the people in this area were taxing themselves when Prop 13 passed, they continue to receive a share of the property taxes. And that's the money that has been partially allocated to subsidizing sewer costs, but mostly is now going to the parks budget to improve this community. And that isn't an extra cost to people. That's
That's our
part of
share of the
the,
1%
it's
everyone
our share of the
pays.
property tax that everybody pays. And that's the money that we're gonna have to maintain parks once we get some built. So it means that we're really lucky here. We have low sewer rates and we have the extra revenue that's available for developing parks. So
And
I
of course,
think
one
it's
reason.
good news.
One reason that our rates are low, as Chuck said to me about 15 years ago, that he said, Granada's a bowl and we all know what flows downhill.
Right, and that's why I don't like to compare. Montera's got 14 pump stations that they have to keep up and maintain, so their rates will be higher. And I don't, just big picture, I don't think we need to be justifying low rates. I know, I get it, but right.
Well, it's
We
important,
shouldn't
I
be
think, as a
embarrassed.
board member to understand, to really
Right.
have a good sense of why, what's happening here.
Once we've transitioned to having all of the property tax go to the Parks and Rec side, then I think our minimum sewer service charge is still gonna be somewhat lower than Half Moon Bay's minimum.
Oh, it's gonna be way
Well,
low.
no, it's what I just said. If you just added 10% to all the, that's what our percentage of property tax is. So it's a
Yeah, we'll
very
still be
simple
low.
calculation. We'll go from 460 to 504, 506. So it's still low.
Yeah.
And the state has said that they want, they don't want to see services that should be provided by supported by user fees, funded by the property tax revenues, which is why this conversion to a community service district makes sense, so that people, sewer fees pay for maintenance of sewers.
To put a more specific point on that, that's been the explicit policy of the state since Prop 13 was passed.
Right, and it's spelled out in the vote. I was interested to see. Here, the 4 years ago.
Right.
So that's my comments.
Okay. Jim?
No, I'm in favor of going ahead and just get the paper stamps, that's the biggest driver.
Matthew?
Likewise, we have to go ahead with this. I have a comment about history. Not only do we have topography on our side, but the developers who originally built El Granada did a good job. They started, as I understand it, in 1918 and had a sewer system in place that basically took everything right into the ocean by 1920. That's the year the Ocean Shore Railroad went broke and stopped running, and they lost virtually all the possibility of selling any more lots out here. So it's just a cautionary note on watch what you build, because things change. But they did do a really good job, because a lot of those 1920 lines are still in place, and we're replacing them piece by piece, year after year.
I thought we replaced some significant chunk of that
Oh, yeah.
a couple of years ago.
We did, well, we've done 3 out of the 6-year projects. We've done 3 of them, yes. We bundled the last 2 together. And these, these lines are not in The reason we focused on Medio Creek, it was 50,000 gallons a day over a bridge right at the ocean underneath the creek. You know, these lines out here are old, they're gonna have to replace them some way, but they're not in any danger of imminent collapse or failure or gonna cause a big spill. We focus on the big stuff first, and then we go on.
Well, I,
Is there any indication that even this can't be enough? When you look at the spills we've had, you look at, we do have some of the oldest average age, pipes, you look at all that. Could the increase not even be enough?
Our CIP project, and Kennedy Jenks, I think I put in my memo, is updating this as we speak, and we should have it by next meeting, our new updated CIP. That Medio Creek project is the biggest one. Once we get everything off that bridge, like I said, there's not gonna be any, more importantly is funding Sam's repair of the IPS pipeline, because obviously, as we've all seen, when that spills and breaks, it spills big. The stuff here, if you get a root that blocks a sewer main, there'll be 5 houses on it. It's not environmentally hazardous as something like that.
the Medio Creek one was important because if the bridge were to fail and take down that line, I would think that the Regional Water Quality Board would go to the maximum end of the range of what they're allowed to make the fines. The fines can be from $1 a gallon to $10 a gallon, and for that location, I think they'd make it $10 a gallon.
We also don't want to have a leak into the ocean.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So this was proactive, it's called, deal with it before it's an emergency. And,
So do you need a motion?
I've been telling Chuck for 20 years that the bridge is gonna fall down, and he keeps saying no, but it'll fall down while he still works.
I've been right for 20 years.
Yeah, okay. Barbara?
I said in 1920 when they finished the shore lines.
So we'll need board action to adopt the ordinance, amending the ordinance code, sections 700 sub 04 and sub 05 to increase the residential customer and non-residential customer sewer service charges.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and
We
seconded.
have Matthew and,
And Jim, give me Jim.
Oh, I didn't hear Jim, you have to speak louder.
all right, we'll give it to you, Barbara.
Okay, whatever.
Okay?
Okay, any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
So motion passes 4-0-1 with Director Seaton abstaining.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Item 2, consideration of approval, Class 3 mainline permit to serve APN 047144370 for 620 Avenue Portola. Owner, okay, how do you pronounce this name?
Kostiuk?
Okay.
And code exemption to allow simultaneous issuance of Class 3 and A1 sewer permits.
Bill, you want to take it, or you want me to do it? No, I said Delia.
Okay, the applicants are here tonight, Mr. and Mrs. Kostiuk, and they submitted an application for a Class 3 mainline extension. It's actually very short because the line goes to the neighboring house. They're just off of the pavement road there on Portola, and our district engineer has approved the plans. They have asked for an exception to allow issuance of the Class 1A application as well, which this board has done once before, which I referenced. It was done back in 2013 for reasons because of a loan timeline requirement, which would have caused the whole project to fail, basically. And the Kostiuks are essentially asking for the same thing, if not a little bit more, because they have a significant amount of grading that's going to be needed to be done for this home. And right where the line would be built is where the heavy equipment machinery will be going over, and so it'd probably be better to have that all done before, you know, the line is put in. That's one reason. They also do have a loan requirement to start construction by August. That's
Yeah, I think we have 45 days and it closes at the end of June.
It's coming up very quickly. And the county also has a grading moratorium that takes effect every year from October 1st to April 30th. And so they need to get all their grading done, otherwise they'll be waiting until basically May of next year to start break ground on their project. So they are asking essentially for the board approval to not only approve the Class 3, but also allow staff to issue the Class 1A for the home as well.
And, yes, the Class 3 is the construction permit for the main, the Class 1A is the house.
Now, I'm the only one still associated with the district who has any idea why this requirement is in our ordinance code. And it's in there because at the time I first ran for office in 1997, we heard from a local builder, the kind of small builder who buys a property, builds a house and sells it, and then buys another property, builds a house and sells it. So he does one at a time himself. And he bought a property from a big, very well-known builder who I won't name because anytime you say his name, your phone rings and he threatens to sue you. I'm serious, he does. That's his MO. So basically this builder bought the property with the understanding that there was a sewer main to serve the property. There wasn't. And he basically went bankrupt because he had to spend the money to build the sewer main. And through all of that, he also had a heart attack because of the stress. So when I got elected and we took over the board, 3 of us got elected at the same time to take over the board, one of the early things we did is set policy that we would not issue a Class 1 permit until the main line was complete. So I have real reluctance to consider these things. I understand the situation here, and what I would suggest the board require is some sort of guarantee of completion of the main line, like a bond or something. I don't know what the various possibilities are, but we need something such that if they don't complete the main line and they sell the property, and I don't want the same thing to happen again. I still remember the guy's name from 21 years ago that this affected.
Well, one thing that I do want to mention, and that this has changed since back then, but the county will not issue a certificate of occupancy on a home unless we've signed off on it. And they have been very diligent in doing that. And so we wouldn't sign off on the house until the main line has been dedicated. So I don't foresee any problems with that issue that you bring up. Because the house, I mean, I don't know how a house could be sold without a certificate of occupancy, but.
Well, the situation I'm talking about, the property was sold before the house was built.
Oh,
Well, that's a matter of someone's due diligence, so.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Who pays for the main line extension?
the people who are constructing it, yeah, they take all the expenses.
And do they put that money up ahead of time, or?
No, in this district, when you want to build someplace that there's no sewer main that can serve the property, you have to build it at your expense after our engineer has approved the design. Once it's completed and inspected and signed off by our engineer, then it's accepted into our system for the district to maintain it from that point going
So
forward.
we don't build it, they have to get a
No, we
contractor
don't
to
have,
build it.
but we do take a deposit for engineering expenses. So they even pay our engineer expense.
And then just from background, we do this exact thing a lot more down in my southern districts because for whatever reason, a lot more people extend sewer mains. And what we generally do is, it's a real burden, forget about all this loan stuff and whatnot. It's a real burden to have to wait to start your house, well, for the 2 or 3 or 4 months it takes to extend a sewer main and get the permits. So generally what we do is we allow them to start both, and we send them a letter, which is almost a form letter at this point in time, that says, hey, we're letting you get a sewer permit for your house. Be aware you are completely responsible for building the sewer main. If the sewer main is not built, you will not get a certificate of occupancy. All that kind of stuff to let them know, any prospective buyer know, that it's attached to the sewer permit. Those are the conditions, that here's how you can build. Because I understand what happened to this guy 20 years ago. We've had different things happen with stuff, but for the most part, that seems to have protected us, and we've never had a problem in the past 20 years we've been doing this.
So can you assure the board that we now have enough procedural things in place to basically guarantee that there isn't a repeat of the
I can't
1997
contemplate
incident?
every potentiality, but yes, we have a procedural process in place that stops most of this stuff from happening. Again, if the people are doing their due diligence and they want to see the sewer permit, they'll look at the sewer permit, see the conditions on it. They're really doing their due diligence, so call the sewer district to get it from the horse's mouth, if you will. So we do have procedures in place now, yeah.
Okay,
And we would presumably send a letter like that in this case.
Yes, I'll just send a letter, we'll send you a letter saying, just realize it's on you, you're responsible, you'll sign, we'll sign. Right, I've never heard anyone say that, but that's good. You'll sign, we'll sign, you'll go ahead and hopefully get your stuff going.
So
If the board is willing.
Yeah, I think with those assurances, I'd move to make a motion to approve the simultaneous issuance of Class 3 and A1 sewer permits.
Second.
been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Good luck with all your
Yeah, good luck.
construction.
I didn't realize that section of Avenue Portola actually existed. Oh, it's the other leg that doesn't exist.
The first lot.
Yeah, they have that.
There's-
that
yeah, there's a
Picker
mid-
Street, Picker Street, they're the first lot where the pavement ends right there. There's a house across the street from.
I haven't been up there in enough years, I don't remember what it looks
The
like.
rest of the street is completely paved.
It looks like trees. There's the Portola makes a really sharp U, and that U is missing. And
Well, I guess it's the other leg there that I claim can never be built because it's a cliff.
Yeah,
The problem is the
Okay.
fire turnaround.
When the last lot doesn't need it.
Okay?
All right, guys, thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, item 3, consideration of variance application for APN 047-093-040, 495 Miramar, or 495 Murata Road, Miramar, 3,697 square feet in the 5,000 square foot zoning district. Owner Wilkinson.
All right, Bill? This is variance procedure?
So, before you tonight is the variance procedure for Philip Wilkinson, APN 048-093-040 at 495 Murata Road. In your packet are the required findings to be made. And you can see those findings are in your packet. And the one thing to note is that normally, when we've seen these kinds of issues about certificates of compliance, this is a unconditional certificate of compliance, type A certificate of compliance. Usually when we see these, they're type B, which means it's a conditional certificate of compliance, has other, CDP, other issues that go with it. When you have these right-of-ways, like Highway 1 goes through a parcel and then splits it into two, those are type B certificates of compliance because the parcels are separated. In this case, the parcels are not separated, were not separated when Caltrans encroached onto the parcel, so it's more of a little cut off the parcel.
I don't understand that from looking at the map. Because this doesn't seem to be close enough to the highway that Caltrans taking of the right-of-way would affect this parcel.
What page are you on?
104. And of course, it's printed in the packet upside down, should have north sort of to the top.
I guess it was.
Completely confused.
There's a large vacant parcel on the corner right next to where this parcel is.
Where are we here?
So there are two separate parcels. Yes?
No, it's one.
No, it's one.
But pages 104 and 105,
Isn't 105 an example of
Yeah, what
a
is?
similar parcel that, for comparison? About the attempt to buy the contiguous parcel?
oh,
Okay, but I still don't understand the map regarding this parcel.
Well, if you look, the road sort of shades off a part of the parcel. It's which is
Talk about the bend in the
the
road.
bend in the road, right?
where is it?
Well, I'm trying to find that.
It's essentially right on Highway 1. It may be that Caltrans thought that Marauder Road would be become some kind of thoroughfare, and they grabbed a chunk of it to make a bigger intersection that has never been developed. I bet you that's what it is.
Well, you see Marauder Road on this side,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, so it's right here.
Oh, so it's over there, not there, okay. So, yeah, I still don't see how the highway affects this, because it's,
Well, it looks like
it's-
they made this extra big.
it's this, well, one of these parcels here.
You're looking at the wrong map, aren't you? It should be at page 81. You're looking at,
That's one.
81.
So 104, Jeff.
81?
No, 81 is the people who just left.
Yeah, they had this left.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's definitely
It's
wrong.
104.
The packets are so big, I don't track. Okay.
So, all Caltrans would have done, assuming they widened Marauder Road there, is taken a little pie-shaped piece off of the Marauder Road frontage.
That's correct.
So, what was before Caltrans did that, assuming they did, what would the parcel size have been?
It
Best I
was-
can figure out, it'd be 35 by 100 or something.
Right, and it was still non-conforming.
But
Probably would have been 4,000.
this is in the 5,000 square foot zoning district, and from the map, it's pretty clear that this is somewhat of an anomaly that shouldn't be covered by the intent of our restrictive ordinance. So I would suggest to the board that, considering the specific and nearly unique situation for this parcel, that we should approve this.
I would agree with because all the findings can and probably should be made, as long as the condition that is for the ending of condition 5 is included.
On page 90?
On page 90, well, the actual condition language is top of 91.
Now, I do have one concern, which is the parcel next to us that they offered to buy and were essentially summarily declined. That's a vacant parcel, right?
There's 3 vacant parcels around it, and I would offer 90 parcels.
So
For more than I paid for mine.
but specifically the one that's uphill from the highway from yours, that's
Towards the highway,
no, uphill away from the highway.
that's beyond
Oh, I'm still disoriented because the page in the packet's backwards.
There's a vacant parcel there, correct.
So, that's also only a hair bigger than your parcel, right? And it's undeveloped?
Correct.
So, I'm gonna say to the board what you've heard me say every single time we're faced with this. That other parcel owner is gonna come in here at some point and say, well, we want a variance too, when these parcels could have been combined and one house built instead of 2. So,
Well,
where does this end?
the finding in number 7, that finding says that the 2 vacant contiguous lots that are 9440 square feet and 10,510 square feet. So those would be,
Wait a second, I'm lost. Where are you?
that's on top of page 92.
That's right.
So those would be conforming. But I wanted to ask the question of the applicant, which is, you've given evidence that you did try to buy any parcel that you could connect with yours, and you were turned down. Did you ever think of or ask about buying part of what, I mean, if there's a 10,500 square foot lot contiguous, that's a big lot. Did you ever ask if they would just sell you a bit of it?
I talked to Tom Perry about it, and
Oh.
they're not interested.
Yeah, Tom Carey's answer is always, I don't sell land.
Yeah.
We know that.
Well, it's done well for him. I wish I had thought
Yeah.
the same thing 20 years ago.
But Matthew, my specific concern is only with the owner of 050, which is 4,080 square feet. I guarantee you at some point, they're gonna be in here and they're gonna say, well, we can't merge with anybody else. That's because they refused this one.
And my only response to that is I think in the next couple of years, I'd be more concerned about the state of California coming after boards for preventing, with all the affordable housing issues and everything else. You have cities like Half Bay talking about building houses on like 1,500 square foot lots right now. I mean, some of these tiny homes and things like that they're trying to push through to solve these issues. I look at something like this. For the area, it's a variance, but if you look at what some of these other cities are starting to push right now to solve some of the issues and the leadership that California is doing to try to get some of the smaller governments to be more flexible. And, I think, to me, I'd be more concerned with that over the next couple of years than I would be with another parcel owner coming in for variance. And I think that in the scheme of things, I think, it is a variance application and everything else, but I think you compare this to what, like I said, even what's, Half Bay had a big affordable housing thing on Sunday, and you compare with some of the radical things they're looking at to become more innovative in terms of solving some of these issues. This wouldn't even be on the radar, in terms of this type of variance. I think is minimal concern compared to some of the other, bigger concerns that I would have if this was like a 1,500 square foot lot or 2,000 square foot lot, somebody trying to cram a house on. So I think that within that, I think this is a reasonable request, and they've done everything, made a good faith effort to acquire the other land, which I think, at the end of the day, like even Matthew's point, I think that could be, it's almost impossible to put a deal like that together, because you'd have to get the other parcel owner to go through the process of subdividing the property so they could sell off. But maybe that's longer term, that's one of the solutions that, in those cases, that there would be like a fast track for that subdivision application process. So to Leonard's point, government could help solve and be a catalyst for those negotiations by saying, hey, listen, if you do have a neighbor, 10,000 square foot lot, they could split it, give you some of it. We'll fast track that you know, allowing them to subdivide a part of it so they could sell it off. But I think outside of that, which I think is a solution that government should be looking at solving so that, you know, so that, that we're not in these situations. I think that, you know, I look at them as done all they can do, and it's still not too unreasonable, you know, in the scheme of things of looking at some of these other substandard lots.
It's actually only gonna get worse because the vast majority of our state legislators in Sacramento are deranged and belong in the loony bin because California's out of water. We need to put up a sign that says full.
Okay, but that's not the
Yeah.
topic in front of us.
Yeah, no, and yeah, I
Let's
mean,
just, yeah.
Nor our purview.
yeah.
All right, so do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the variance application for APN 048-093-040, 495 Marauder Road.
And the required findings associated with it.
Yeah, the required findings.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 5-0.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll look forward to moving here when you said it was 103.
There you go.
My brother lives in Glendale, California, and he sent me a photo of his outdoor thermostat a few days ago reading 117.
Wow. Very good. Okay. Well,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
117. It wasn't that hot in Death Valley.
127 yesterday in Death Valley.
What?
It was 127 yesterday,
Seriously.
yeah, in Death Valley.
Okay, item 4, public hearing, consideration of Granada Community Services District budget for 2018/19 fiscal year.
Okay. This is the same budget your board saw in May. It incorporates the only differential is it does not incorporate. You put the wrong budget in?
I didn't check the dates.
Oh, I sent an old budget. Yeah.
It says 18/19.
No, I didn't incorporate the 460 into it. Oh, I know why I didn't do that, because I couldn't do it. So we will have to make a change to this budget. When we do this, we have to go through the process. I can't put a budget in that your board hasn't approved the rate increase in. So we have to change the budget to 460 now, because at the time I present this budget, our current, per year, our year charge is 402.
So is that the only change
So the only
under
change
budget
in the
revenue
budget is
assumptions?
we'll be
But it'll be a
changing
percentage
the
change in a lot of
402 to
things.
460, yeah. And I have it in my backup, I should have
So,
provided.
so
the backup
basically
one.
that's $58 times 3,200 ERUs increase in.
Yeah,
in
and I
that.
could pull it up on my thing because I've done the backup one. I usually prepare two and have one as a handout, so I apologize for that. But that's the
So
only difference from our previous budget.
Basically, that's somewhere around, what, six?
Well, we can look at my 5-year projection and whatnot, because it's included in that, so. I apologize for that.
On the projection that was in item 1?
Yes.
So it's roughly 150,000 a year in, increase in
Yeah.
revenue.
I can't do it quickly in my head because it's.
Actually, our sewer service charge total is $1,487,270. That's what we're putting on the tax roll. That's with.
Oh, that's a mistake.
Hmm? Where?
If you look at the next agenda item, which is our sewer service charge, there's a summary on page 135 that gives the.
I can't hear you very well.
On page 135, there's a summary of our sewer service charge report, which is the next item, and it gives the total amount. that
1486
we are putting
or
on the tax
14.
roll with the increase.
Let me pull up my budget.
1487. So from 1471, it goes to 1487.
No,
No, one, yeah, one.
give me 1 second, please.
Yeah, that's,
The commercial.
The number's correct.
that's only 16 grand more
Which-
than
Yeah,
this.
I know, that's why I said it.
Which number is correct?
Give me 1 second, please. Yeah, so here's the mistake I made, was the 3,200, so I usually don't do this. The reason the 1471 doesn't match the 1487 in the 5-year projection was because I wanted people to be able to, in the sewer service charge report, was because I wanted people to be able to track the 1471 with all my other numbers. That 1471 is correct, that 402 per ERU is incorrect. So the budget itself is correct, so.
That should say 460 instead of
It's
402.
1471 is correct.
So what
Doesn't
would,
match the number in the sewer service charge report, because Delia produces a sewer service charge report after I do my budget. My budget's an estimate. And I didn't want to change the number because I didn't want someone to look at, try and tie this back to our rate increase, our Prop 218 rate increase. It wouldn't tie. So that budget is correct.
And the, on page 124, the number 16, professional services, other, that's engineering,
Other is,
65,000.
other is me generally, and
Oh.
a small piece of, if we get as needed engineering or
Okay.
some outside thing, yeah. So what I usually do when we do these is I prepare 2 budgets. This time I did not, I just prepared the one. So that is the correct budget with the correction of 460 period area.
so it's probably too late to deal with this now. I don't know why I didn't think of it before, and, but Barbara had suggested to me, that we need more staff on the Parks and Rec side. So I think that in the near future, we need to have a board-level discussion of what that might look like.
Absolutely, and Barbara and I had talked previously about that a few months back and even more recently. Realize the parks budget that we're approving here that shows $100,000 in projects and whatnot, you know, I have no idea, as does no one else on the board, of what we're going to be spending next year in parks. I know we'll be putting $400,000 of property tax revenue to parks.
Oh, my most likely guess, though, is 0. But then again,
No.
I've been sarcastic about this for a while now.
No, we're making progress, Leonard.
Yeah,
Things
right.
are getting done.
Yeah. Still waiting for
I
the
didn't hear
picnic
anything.
table.
So.
Well,
But it's, you know, it's not too late if you wanted to bump professional services up to $50,000 or $60,000 in the parks on page 127.
I mean,
Well, why professional services?
Yeah, I'd prefer actual projects, you know. I
Well,
think.
no, they're talking about getting additional staff to prosecute the projects.
Okay,
That's what I'm
yeah,
talking
I
about.
guess.
We don't have to.
Yeah.
This is a budget. Again, it's a set of numbers.
can we, I mean, I know David's been interested, and I agree with him, about having a meeting about parks projects. Can this part of the budget be amended, or?
Absolutely.
So, it seems to me tonight to pull a number out of the air, I mean, I appreciate your bringing it up, because I've been talking about this, but I also think it's a little complicated to figure out, there are a lot of options, for how we get additional staff time to work on some of these park projects. So, I don't know, I'm not really comfortable with this sort of, I mean, we could add money to the parks budget, but we also have money available in this budget for parks projects. It's just not in that line item right now.
Right. And again, this is a budget. It's
Right.
not set in stone. It doesn't mean you can't exceed it. People go under it all the time, and we don't do so. You know, generally, if it's something substantial, like we decide to hire somebody at $60,000, we'll amend the budget in mid-year or whenever appropriate.
Well, and
Yeah.
I have another question on another part, which is back over here in the sewer capital projects,
Page.
126. We talked about the new capital improvement project budget, but it looks like here, all we're funding is finishing Medio Creek, and then $10,000 in mainline systems repairs. I thought the capital improvement budget included additional projects during this coming year.
It does.
Year one was Meteor Creek, years 2 through 5 are the replacement of the sewer mains.
So nothing's gonna happen till 2019, 19/20.
Right, that's in the 5-year CIP.
But remember that this district, unlike just about everybody else, funds capital improvements projects out of reserves and replenishes reserves out of money that we collect that we don't spend. Essentially, we treat the reserves in part as a savings account that we're putting money in so that we can go out and buy the new whatever we need. It's the difference between buying a car with a loan and buying a car with cash.
Well, I guess I understand that, but it
And-
seems as if,
And let me throw in one more thing, and the analyst consultant that Chuck hired said we shouldn't do that, and I disagree. I think that it makes more sense the way we're doing it than the way everybody else does it.
It's semantics at
I've-
the end of the day.
I've watched too many
Basic-
times Montera counting nickels to decide what their sewer service charge should be as they try and guess how much they're gonna spend on 1 year's CIP.
The reserve acts as a buffer usually. The reason we've been spending down from reserve is because we had a high reserve and it didn't need to be that high for the most part. So, but classic budget is you collect enough money to pay
Right.
for O&M and any capital projects you're doing out of your operating income, as long as capital projects are replacement and whatnot, so. You know, the reserve acts as a buffer in case you budget $300,000 for a CIP and it comes in at 400 or 200. It's almost like a rate smoothing reserve.
Right, what I'm saying is most other agencies, their sewer service charge goes up and down year to year, depending on what projects they're doing that year. Ours doesn't, and I think
But that's
that's
why
a benefit to our ratepayers.
More to that
that's
point
stable.
is why the question Barbara just asked is why aren't we spending $650,000 next year in 1 year, is because we're trying to smooth it out so our CIP expenditures are $350,000 a year. Could we do a sewer main repair of $300,000 or replacement this year? Yes, but there's no burning need, and I'd rather smooth out our rates and smooth out our CIP. That's why we do it that way.
so all these things in the capital improvement budgets that say in 2007, these lines should have been replaced.
This 2007 is the report that was based on. What page are you on, Barbara?
I'm looking at 42.
What?
Back on the CIP improvements for El Granada.
42?
Yes. So, see, this is number 75. CCTV was conducted on this section of sewer mainline during the 2007 CIP. Review of this tape revealed broken pipes, lots of roots, and offset joints. Based on the recommendations, this line is currently listed as a very high priority pipe replacement. And it
Right,
still
so
hasn't been
so-
replaced 10
so
years
in-
later,
no.
11 years later.
Well, now we're gonna start getting into whose opinion of what needs to be replaced immediately. And
Okay, I
like
mean, I'm asking the question because,
I can explain that. If you ask the guys, some guys will say, the cleaning guys, they go, hey, there's a lot of roots in this pipe, it needs to be replaced immediately. Or it needs to be cleaned 4 times a year instead of once a year, because that does the same thing. Pipes that need to replace immediately, there's different standards, there's what's called the NASCO standards, and it's an actual assessment criteria. Just because you've got a lot of roots in a pipe doesn't mean you need to replace it. It
this one
means you
says
need
it's
to-
broken and has offset joints.
And if we replaced every pipe in the district that had broken or offset joints, you gotta remember, these old clay pipe sections
know.
are this big, so if I thought it was that important, we'd be doing it as a priority
Okay.
replacement project.
All right. my question is,
I
here's
get
a
it.
2007 report that says these things should be done, and it's 11 years later, and I'm like, really? You haven't gotten around to it? I'm not, I defer to your judgment on this,
Right.
but just coming into it and reading this, you know, there's quite a few here that it sounds like they,
Because we did the CCTV in 2007 and they identified these things. Trying to think of another, the Portola, Princeton Pump Station,
Right.
SAM asset. They said that had to be replaced 14 years ago. And I was joking with Jonathan the other day because there was a Whitley Burchett report 12 years ago that said the IPS looks fine, that Portola, that Princeton Pump Station's got to be replaced immediately. 12 years later, we've had several failures of the IPS, and Princeton is run flawlessly.
yeah.
So it's a judgment call, and when I look at the tapes, because I actually do look at some of the tapes when we look at this stuff, the joints are offset, yeah. Obviously, if it's offset like that, yeah. If the break in the pipe is it's missing the entire top half of the pipe section, as I've seen, yeah, we're in there with spot repair. If it's roots growing in, it's just a professional judgment, and I'm sure you could find someone who agrees with me and someone who disagrees with me. But, you know,
Okay.
It's not that we haven't reviewed this, it's just I've made, and, you know, we haven't had spills that have led to that. We've had spills due to lack of cleaning, really.
So, none of, all the repairs on this page that are, these pages 42, 43, and 44.
These are our next project for,
So none of these have been done. All of these
none
are
of-
waiting.
well,
No, I'm not,
no, I know. I'm sorry, Barbara. It's just, there's a lot of, so we had a 6-year CIP Kennedy Jenks provided this 6-year CIP program, okay? So we went into year 1 and we actually started doing it. We took a whole nother look at all the tapes and everything they did. So we did basically the year 1 project, but we also did a bunch from 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, because we looked at them and said,
there actually
that
works.
one should have been a priority, and we slid it forward. Year 2, we did the same thing. So this isn't a rigid thing, but, you know, generally, we did 80% of the projects in year 1 and took some of the other. I'd have to go through this line by line to figure it out, but
So-
we are doing an active assessment of it. It's not,
So some of these have been done, or portions maybe of some of these have been
there
done?
may be 1 or 2 or 3 sections, and I'd have to talk with John Rayner, because, you know, it's not easy to pull manhole number to manhole number and put it in Portola Avenue. We have to look at the map and do it, so. And I've got, you know, I've got maps I didn't include in here that show priority. I've got, you know, but you'll see a lot of this stuff when Kennedy Jenks comes back with the updated CIP, and it'll recommend new areas to be CCTV and a new program based on some of the tapes they reviewed, so.
Is there a way to force rank them or categorize them?
That's what we do as part of the NASCA system.
But these aren't force ranked in E?
When you say, I'm assuming you mean priority.
Priority-wise, yeah.
That's what we're doing here, so there is a priority 1 through 3, but again, this is a spreadsheet they put together, then we sit down and talk about it
Priority
as
1 through
professionals and decide, hey, yeah, I think this is important, no, it isn't, this one can get by with more cleaning, more frequent cleaning, until 3 years from now, when we say, okay, we're gonna replace it, so.
So it seems that every single one of the highlighted yellow ones is priority 3.
I don't-
Right, because we've done a lot of priority 1s
Yeah.
in years 1, 2, and 3.
So what is the
But again, on
timeframe?
re-review, his priority 3 sometimes is not mine. I look at it and go, no, I've seen that, I've talked to my collections guys, they go, yeah, that doesn't look bad, but when I run the auger through it or the thing, the machine's gonna hit it, chip away at it, and that's, you know, that's what my guys are bringing to the table, not an engineer looking at it, that kind of thing.
What's the timeframe covered by this report?
6 years. No, the one in there is the final 3 years of the 6 years.
But where it says number of call-outs, that's over how many years? 1 or 5 or 6 or 3?
I don't know that answer, Leonard. I'd have to look at the whole report. Again, I didn't give you all the whole report.
Because most of the highlighted yellow ones, the number of call-outs is very small, often 0.
Right, but the ones that are one priority, there's a few that have, in the 20s.
And again, call-outs can be everything from the pipe collapsed to we had to go out and clean it again because roots are coming in the cracks. So,
So, once Meadow Creek is done, then there'll be the bandwidth essentially to start tackling some more of these.
well, again, it's a rate smoothing issue. Your board told me today, I want you to start in on this replacement stuff. I'd say, okay, let's go. But
That's, I mean, I don't think boards should do your job. I mean, you know what I mean, and we should respect you, but I'm also just trying to understand this.
no, I
because
get it.
It seems
Yeah,
as if,
I think you can get.
you give us
I don't-
one report and then,
Right, I don't have frustration. It's difficult for me to distill all the work we've done reviewing this stuff and the maps I've reviewed and highlighted and sat down with John into, I try and give you all kind of what you need to make broader policy decisions.
I mean, would you be able to add a comment line to each one of these?
Well, there's comment lines all out here in the spreadsheet that you can't see.
From your comments?
My
on each
comments, John Rayner, Kenny Jenks's comments, there's
The-
another, how many rows you just can't fit on a spreadsheet. So I give
So you can include that in the next, because to me, that kind of,
But
shows the other side of the story.
More
that-
of the policy decision is what your
Yeah.
board will be asking me is, Chuck, what's the real priority?
Right.
What's the biggest chance of having sewage hit the ground? That's what we're addressing as the biggest priority. It's not, this is a long-term project. This is not a sprint. This is a long marathon. We're marching through repairing these lines. This is a 20, 30, 40-year thing. We're gonna go through the 1920 and the bad sections first. Then this stuff to the east is all the 1960s pipe. You all could look at this stuff and go, well, that 60s pipe isn't bad as from the 60s. Now, the problem is they made it out of transite, which is
What?
transite, which is a,
Pressed asbestos.
yes, thank you.
Well,
It's fiberglass and it's best if it turns out it's very brittle. It looked great in the 60s. They thought it'd be forever like PVC, and it turns out it's very brittle. So that might be a bigger priority sometimes in the 1920 pipe, because clay turns out lasts a long time. It's got more joints.
so this is just a budget. If there's a problem with one of these lines,
It
we
gets
have the
put-
flexibility to spend
And
money.
so what happens
Okay,
is. and
I don't
what-
wanna beat this to death. I just want to
And when
understand.
Delia puts her thing and she says, Chuck, we've had a whole bunch of call-outs on Isabella. So I tell her, send something to John Rayner, that gets put on the list, even though it might not have been here before. This is a guideline, so.
Now, I suggested a few years ago, and I don't have any newer information, are we checking with the county and CCWD regarding when those agencies might be doing street work such that if we coordinated our work, the repaving would only have to be done once with a shared cost?
We haven't, that's such a minor part of the repair usually.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it pisses people off to have their street dug up more than once, close together, and so, even if it doesn't save us that much money, it's goodwill to coordinate and only have the street dug up once. If CCWD is planning a project in this street 2 years from now, and we say, well, sometime in the next 5 years, we're gonna have to work on that, why don't we plan it for the same time there?
I'll tell John to contact.
It's difficult to mesh those because CCWD and the county are doing the same thing Chuck just described. They have a list of things that need to be done, and the items jump around. Priorities change when conditions change, right? So if CCWD all of a sudden discovers a big leak in the middle of Alhambra, that becomes priority, and it may not have been planned to be dealt with for 5 years, but now they have to do it now, so.
Yeah, but I think a lot of the time they could work out what I'm suggesting.
Well, there could be a system where the agencies notify each other. Yeah,
What concept?
yeah.
Well, the
Well, we
county,
do dig alert.
the county gives, what are you talking about? The county gives us 90 days notice when they're gonna repave a street and we have to move our manholes.
It just adds complexity, I don't know,
Yes.
it's not a bad idea, Leonard, but, especially since the sewer pipe and the water pipe have to be at least 10 feet apart. like we're in the same trench or near the same trench. No, so
Is it 10 feet here?
10 feet.
10 feet, I thought, everywhere.
A lot of places, it's 6,
Yeah.
yeah.
Where?
A lot of places,
Not here.
not here, yeah.
Not in California.
Well, I might be yeah.
California's
It's 10 feet in San Diego, but I thought that was a statewide standard. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's statewide.
Move approval.
Second,
What's the actual required motion?
No, first of all, you have to open the public hearing.
right.
Go back to my agenda reference here. Okay, so the public hearing on the budget is open. No members of the public wish to comment. Does the camera get all the audience members?
Hear that grumbling?
Okay, final call for protests. Hearing none, close the public hearing. Board consideration of public comment, I guess we received none. And all written and oral protests.
No. You just have to open the hearing and close the hearing.
Oh, that's the shorter public hearing steps. Yeah, okay. So, public hearing is closed. We have a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a resolution?
There's no resolution.
It's a
That's
budget.
okay, I'm reading from the
What are you
agenda.
reading from?
I'm reading from the agenda.
Number 4?
Oh.
No, I got it.
Okay, the steps weren't printed for number 4. That's the problem.
I just gave them to you. So Barbara has made a motion. Did you make a motion to approve?
Yes, twice.
Not a second again.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Is that unanimous?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Item 5. Public hearing, consideration of a resolution adopting the sewer service charge and delinquent garbage account reports and authorizing the collection of said charges on 2018-19 FY San Mateo County tax roll. Any staff report?
Okay, this is our standard sewer service charge and delinquent garbage account report. We're required to produce this each year, put it in front of your board for approval, and to also place it on the property tax roll of the county of San Mateo. So Delia has put together the attached report. It incorporates the increase in the sewer service charge to $460 per EIU, and also included are the delinquent garbage accounts.
Okay. I have some questions, but I guess we'll open the public hearing first for public comment. Did we receive any comments?
No.
Okay. Periodically, I raise this issue, usually at this time of year. For the non-residential, do we cross-check their actual usage versus permitted?
I do, on some of them I have. It's interesting, because like, for instance, the Point Pillar project development, they're substantially under what they purchased, and some of the older ones, I don't really have, there's multiple permits that have been purchased over the years, and so I'd have to gather the data and figure out what the total ERUs were, but the biggest ones, which is the Harbor District and Point Pillar, very well within the capacities that they purchased.
Okay. Can I suggest that you keep a spreadsheet for all the non-residential APNs showing their entitlements so that you can?
If I have them, some of them are going way back and I don't have complete information.
Yeah, if you look at the minutes from the late 90s, you'll see that there was a question of how many ERUs to assign to parcels that were connected before the district existed.
Yeah, it's a lot of the commercial properties are warehouses in Princeton that use very, very little
this conversation each year, and I say to you, if you're gonna be looking at the people who exceed their ERU allotment, we'll also have to look at the people who don't.
Well,
So for every extra charge we put in place, we'll be giving refunds.
and I still think that we need to reevaluate the 221 gallon a day assumption, because since the average residential here, I'm gonna guess, is about half of that 221 due to water costs and statewide restrictions, that our rate structure shifts more and more of the costs onto residential as time goes on. And I think that our assumption needs to be based on the average residential, not the 221. Because if we assume that an ERU is 221 gallons a day, and all the residential is using half that but paying for the whole ERU, and commercial is billed by actual gallons divided by 221, then the number of ERUs that they're paying for is artificially low, potentially by a factor of 2.
Well, I'd say first off, our average residential use, I believe, is something like 160 gallons per day per house, last I looked at it. And remember, the 221 is a planning number. It's not an actual daily flow number. It also contemplates higher flows on any given day. So it's a far more complicated thing than taking the average flow and doing it. And I understand your point, but that gets complicated quick trying to figure that out.
I understand that. Was a math major. It's arithmetic. It's doable. There just has to be a will to do it.
All right.
Okay, so we need to
So,
approve this?
Would the board be interested in having a near future agenda item to discuss whether we want to direct staff to do that analysis? All right, I'm going to make the executive decision. Let's have a board agenda item in the near future to decide if we want to direct staff to do the analysis of that.
The analysis being to confirm or disconfirm what you just stated?
To analyze whether the assumption of 1 ERU is valid for residential in terms of the allocation of costs. Because if we end up deciding, say that average residential would more appropriately be computed using 160 gallons a day average, then if we declare an ERU to be 160, then we collect less money from residential and more money from commercial.
Mhm.
And I can.
Let's not put this on the agenda. Let me talk with John Rayner about this, because it's not as straightforward and simple as you possibly think it is when you start taking into account I&I, length of pipeline, serving residential, and a bunch of stuff that's popping into the top of my head. But let me talk to John Rayner, Leonard.
Keep me on the loop.
It also doesn't
Okay.
seem to me this is necessarily something that's broke.
Yeah, it is. If like Prop 13 costs just keep creeping over time onto residential from commercial, yeah.
Because, to Barbara's point, I would do a calculation of what percentage of our flow is commercial. It may be so de minimis that it's not worth the
Well, I
calculation.
think we actually have that number in here. But anyway, okay, so let's move on. What does NIS stand for in the?
Not in system, that means they're probably on well. We don't have the load information. It's not in the CCWD system. So that's,
But the county doesn't allow commercial on wells.
well, there's, count that those parcels, it's possible, but they got sewer permits back in the early days and never, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, but they are not in the CCWD system. We looked under addresses, APNs, changes in APNs, so we tried to establish, if it was somehow incorrect in some way, but no, those are ones that have been there for a long time, showing as not in system.
Well, some of them make sense, like, just eyeballing one of these at random, Coastside Opportunity Center warehouse in Princeton. Well, yeah, they probably don't have a water connection, and begs the question, though, of why they have a sewer connection.
They might have received did on that property back in the sixties. There were many permits that were issued way back when, before, we have the guidelines for that now.
Okay, mark my pages well enough. On page 207, this is Rocket Farms sewer service charge calculation. The first chart says 10-month consumption, and then the total flow at the bottom there comes in as what appears to be the annual flow under sewer service charge.
No, it's the actual flow that they had for the 10-month period. And the reason why I did it for 10 months is I'm trying to get them on the April to March, schedule, because that's what our ordinance code stipulates. Although it does give a little, that's why I put, if you notice on page 207 at the bottom, I put in the section 700.05E, because it states that it should be for flow between, certain times. And the way they've been providing it to me is very confusing, and so they got off schedule, so I'm trying to get them back on schedule.
So next year theoretically, they'll have 12 months?
Yes, because I cut it off as
So
of
they'll
March
go to March,
31st.
right.
Yeah, so
Okay.
next year will be.
So this is just an adjustment year.
Okay. Delinquent garbage accounts. I didn't read this whole thing, but one that jumped out at me is APN 047181840 on page 213. There's two lines that are identical.
Right. I'm gonna have to combine those or ask Ecology to combine them. Those are duplexes or two living units that have the same APN. And the list was provided to me with the APN listed, in two separate lines for the address, like apartment A, apartment B. But as far as the tax roll is concerned, they have to be a combined total, so that's what's being done to get them on the tax roll.
So if a duplex only has one APN, do they only get one tax bill from the county?
Yes.
But I thought a duplex can have separate owners.
Mm-mm.
Oh, so a duplex is always a single owner.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it my imagination, or does this list get longer every year?
More and more people that are paying their garbage bill for some reason, it has gotten much larger. Since I've been here, it just keeps getting longer.
Well, I think it's a matter of their process in terms of the Recology has their website, and then they have payment sites, and then each area that they service has a different payment site. So like if you don't go to and they've changed it a couple times too, I know too. So it's like if you don't save that link and you go to Google it, pay my Recology bill, it's like it's a nightmare to like search through that. I feel like they need to consolidate that into one login for payment, because I imagine a lot of these people want to pay and just like get
Well, they need to
confused.
hire a competent webmaster,
Yeah.
which they have not done yet.
Well, one of the things is our district used to send out notices for their delinquent garbage, which is very time consuming for us. And, we get very little back for that. It's really as a courtesy to Seacoast, or pardon me, for Recology that we do that. And when we have sent out the notices, a lot of these people have come in and paid their bills, but we're not doing the notices anymore. So we might want to ask if Recology can maybe start sending notices. A lot of people, once they find out about the late fees that are added on, like it's a flat fee. So even if you owe $9, you could get charged their, what is it, 50 some odd dollars. And then there's the 10% on top of it. So that, I think when people see that, they are encouraged to come in and pay it, and then we're not putting it on the tax roll. The problem is there are no notices going out, and we don't have the staff to do it anymore, because our list keeps getting longer, and they really need to take care of it themselves.
I'm really concerned about the situation of being one payment behind and getting hit with this late fee and penalty charge. And we should not be allowing Recology to do that.
Well, that's not really the case, because this is for service as only through the end of March, and it's now July, so it is over
Okay,
several.
but if the delinquent balance is 1889 or 2329, that's 1 month's billing.
We approved
And
that,
I see a whole
yeah.
bunch of those
Yeah,
out
well,
there.
that is in their contract, it's in our contract.
We
with
need to
them.
fix that, and we need to tell them we want a contract amendment that specifically prohibits them from doing that.
I haven't gotten any.
So they have
complaints,
to
so.
eat the extra cost, or we have to do something?
I mean, it should be a
not
percentage.
They should not be considering it delinquent if it's one payment behind. It should not be on this list at all if they're only a month behind.
Or
Well,
not even a month, $7.48, they just, you know.
well, the time frame is our time frame. I mean, that's what we've always used through March. So we would have to push that whole
It
cycle back.
doesn't matter what the cutoff is, if the cutoff was January or if the cutoff was July, if they're one payment behind, they should not be allowed to be on this delinquent list.
But they're, like, if they didn't pay their bill in May, they're not on this list. That's what I'm saying. It only is through delinquencies through March.
So that means if they didn't pay the
March
March-
31st, what happens?
If they didn't pay their March bill, then they could be on
Be
here
on
for
there.
That's my
service.
point.
Yeah,
That's
but if they
exactly
didn't
my
pay their
point.
May bill, they're not on here. is
Well,
what I'm
even
saying.
in some cases, like 748, they might be paying their bill every month, but when the fees went up, they're
Or they could
$1.20
have,
short or
they could have
whatever.
stopped, and haven't paid a bill at all since then, but that 1 month is going on because that's our time frame that we designate for delinquencies.
I just have a huge problem with, if the cutoff is the end of March and the March payment wasn't made on time, that they end up on this list paying a late fee that's typically double.
But again, if they haven't paid, they have until now, really, to pay that bill, because I still take them off the list. And there have been many people who have come off that list, if they walked in Recology's office and paid or mailed a payment that was received by last Friday,
So you're
It
checking,
came off.
so.
It came
the-
off
The
the
March
list.
31st date comes, but you're checking in April and in May with Recology? to see-
no. It's only from April of last year through the end of March this year. And as those people pay until we get to the point where we have to put it on the tax roll, if they've paid, they come off. But if they're still overdue on those payments up to March, then they go on.
Okay, so you're saying that if the March payment wasn't made by the time this list was printed, which I assume was like
Friday.
in the last week?
Yes, by Friday,
Oh, okay.
last
So-
Friday.
But are these people getting a notice?
No, they're getting notices through Recology, but not in the official notice that we used to send telling them they're gonna be put on the tax roll. No, they're not getting those notices. I honestly don't know what they're getting, but I spoke with Cheryl in the office there, and she says these people get notice after notice after notice that they're late. So,
Because Recology wants to get paid.
But it seems like the notices we were sending out were more effective for whatever reason.
because they were, but again, it's time consuming for our office, and it's not our charges, so.
But I'm saying maybe we could request
Have them
that
do,
same,
yeah.
because to me, it seems like that's the difference is you're a little late fee, whatever, versus this is gonna be, go to public hearing, all that. That's the difference of people
Right.
writing a check right away and not, goes beyond the money, just the
Right.
pride of it. A lot of
I
people would
do know that they are probably advising them of the late charge, so it's not as though people don't know about it.
So some of these look big enough that, without trying to do the arithmetic, I'm guessing they just never pay it and
Some
let
of them
the whole
have,
thing go to
you know what, I
delinquency.
see the same people on there year after year
Yeah.
after year. Some people just don't want to pay the bill, and they just let it go to tax roll. It's easier for
Yep.
them.
Now, of course, because of that state law that says you can't print most elected officials' home addresses on the internet, it means can't play our old game of counting current and past directors on the list.
That's right. We don't have the names on here anymore.
I know you by address, so.
Yeah, but mine's been on auto payment for a few
Yeah, I
years
know,
now,
you're not on there.
specifically to stay off of
We
this
have
list.
ex-directors on there, but not any current directors on there.
I bet some of these are just that auto payment, and like David said, when the rates went up a little, they just never noticed, and they keep auto paying the same thing, and it just,
Well, that would be
builds
bill
up.
pay, but I actually set up the auto pay on the Recology website, so the rate increases are apparently applied automatically.
Yeah, the thing that disturbs me about, like, for instance, the duplexes is the homeowner is going to get the total charge, and they're getting 2 late fees, or whatever it may be. I mean, it could be more tenants than that, you just never know. And, they could be pretty upset about it. But again, it's not our charges, it's a Recology issue, so.
So on the one that I picked out, that you said Recology would have to merge them together, does that mean that it's only gonna be 1 times the
No.
late fee instead of 2
No,
times?
it's gonna be the total, because that's how they code it on the account, as crediting to the account.
How does Recology even have 2 account numbers for 1 address?
Because they go by account number, they don't go by, they don't, I mean, they have A and B or whatever, I mean, there's many apartments all over the place, so you have to do that. But anyways,
Thank
All
you.
right,
Okay.
Is there a point at which they stop picking up people's garbage?
No. it's
So you can
covered.
be $1,035 in arrears and nothing happens? Well, they put it on the
well,
tax roll.
that's the
Are
whole
we,
catch point. We're mandatory garbage collection, yes. So again, it's a protection for the community
Sure.
because, yeah.
one of the other things that I asked for at some point is, I'd like us to consider, and of course we'll have to have Recology in on the discussion, but I'd like us to consider an alternate service level, for example, picking up every other week, because the savings on a 20-gallon can is pretty useless. And there's a lot of people here that wouldn't fill up a 30-gallon can in 2 weeks, but at least they'd get a reasonable savings. So can we arrange to have that discussion? And of course, you need to work with Recology on scheduling it so they can be here
Well,
as
that'll be
the
part of the
discussion.
discussion in 1 year, 2 years?
2 years, I think.
2 years, yeah.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion? This one has a resolution. Next in order, resolution adopting sewer service charge report and delinquent garbage service charge report and authorizing collection of said charges on the 2018-2019 tax roll.
Why are we combining those two?
Because they're both being put on the tax roll.
Did you just make that motion?
No, I said, do we have a motion to approve that resolution?
Without reading it again, I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 I'll abstain again, since I did before.
So it's 4 ayes, 0 nays, and 1 abstention. Just out of curiosity, why are you abstaining?
The resolution adopting a sewer service charge, just because I did before, so that's what you guys are talking about, right? The increase, it's
Yep.
been increased to?
Well, this is authorizing collection of the sewer service charges.
This is for the delinquent, putting the delinquent accounts on the tax rolls.
Okay, it's not the increase from 402 to
No, the
406.
increase has
Okay.
already been approved, so this
Okay.
just put, it says we're putting what we're charging on the tax roll.
Okay, then I will change.
All right, so it'll be recorded as unanimous?
Yep.
Okay, item 6, consideration of assessment district, am I in the right place here?
Yes.
Yes.
Consideration of assessment district administrative budget and cost recovery levy for FY 2018 and 19.
Okay, this is the levy we levy each year, which sets the assessment district budget and the charge for each parcel still in the assessment district. So it's kind of ministerial in nature. So, up to your board for approval.
What does this charge look like after the bonds are paid off?
Nobody knows. And
Not
I've
the
dug-
answer I was expecting or
That's
looking
a-
for.
That's
It's
an
not for
inadequate
lack
answer.
of investigative insight, and I was just talking to Jonathan about this, because we keep talking about hiring a special bond counsel to figure that out. About 3 years ago, I dove deep into this thing, and I basically came to the conclusion that, just for the rest of you who don't know this, theoretically, the assessment district bond payout ends in 2022, but the assessment district is also an integrated financing district, and it goes on in perpetuity till theoretically, everyone who paid all these yearly charges gets paid back.
Otherwise known as build-out.
Right. Well, otherwise known as never, because when I did my deep dive, it was self-perpetuating. By the time you did the administrative charge each year to figure all this stuff out, and the pittance you collected from contingent assessments, you were losing money each year. So,
Well, what I'm wondering is, would the administrative cost go
I've
down
lost many brain
significantly?
cells on that
And you
one.
can't even pay it off because there's no figure.
Right, right, that's just right.
Would you expect the administrative cost to drop substantially
They
once the
would-
bonds are paid?
They would
would-
drop
yeah.
substantially, obviously, yes.
There would be no trust fees, there would be no county collection fees, there would be no continuing disclosure costs. The administrative expenses, which are the Tausig fees, there would be very little. And the only, with the bonds being paid off, there would be very little cost to the district as far as staff work is involved. That would go down substantially as well. There'll still be a little bit, but.
Well, you'll still be collecting the contingent assessments to
Right.
repay the people who paid the
Right,
non-contingent
right.
assessments.
But
Right.
it
And if you figure
wouldn't be
they
as
paid
high.
$500 a year for 20 years at $1,000, and how long would it take to pay back $1,000?
Wait a minute, 500 times 20 years is how much?
What did I just say?
1,000.
Oh. Sorry.
That'd be 2 years.
Yes. More to my point, 10,000, so i.e. in perpetuity, because it will never happen. We don't need to go into it, I burned a lot of brain cells, it's a never-ending game unless you can figure out, get a bond
One thing
lawyer.
I'd just like to mention, the overhead cost is 31,000 this year is what I calculated, 10%. The reality is, we'd still have those overhead costs.
Wait, what?
The overhead costs. The majority of the expenses are the overhead that we are able to charge to the assessment district legally, and that's what we're doing. But we would still have, we would still have these costs, even without an assessment district, is all I'm saying. Right now, we just have the benefit of them paying for some of it, because that's the way it's legally we can do it.
So the legal analysis that I would suggest would look at, and I don't know what would be an appropriate year to try and make this start, but it would be some year after the bonds are paid off. Look at keeping the non-contingent assessment artificially high to collect enough money to pay off everybody who still has money owed on
Doesn't work that way.
the contingent assessments. And then, once you've done that, then anybody who builds is break even at that point, because they've already paid everything into it, and they won't have to pay a contingent assessment at that point.
Perpetuity. I'm telling you. Did the math.
You
It's
realize,
a math thing, and I wasn't even a math major.
you realize that Jerry Laster is laughing in his grave.
Absolutely.
Because he specifically set this up to be so complicated, nobody could understand it.
You need to, a motion to approve?
Yeah, yeah.
So moved. Motion to approve.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
There's no
opposed?
law against setting up
Any abstentions?
perpetual.
Motion carries 5-0, I think. Item
Integrated
7.
financing districts.
Did staff come to order? Item 7, consideration of appointing California Association of Sanitation Agencies, CASA, voting representative and 2 alternates. Have we ever done this before?
We have not, and it's interesting because apparently this is in their bylaws, and we have been a member since 2003, but this is actually very similar to what we do with the CSDA every year, which is in our bylaws, and the CSDA representative is appointed when our officers are elected. You don't have to do this, even if someone is not available to go to the meeting in order to have the voting rights. You may want to still consider this, I figured, for the future, and we are a member, and it's really a board decision on whether or not you would like to do this or not.
So looking at the membership dues, what's the advantage of being an active member versus an associate member?
I'm not sure.
Because at our budget level, our active member is $44.56 a year. An associate member is, for us, it would be $460, I guess. The problem is that once you cross the $1 million annual budget threshold, the dues triple.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the difference is.
So I'm just wondering if it's worth it for us to be an active member.
Maybe we should go for honorary. That's line 3.
Yeah, and
Oh, what? Oh, honorary. I missed that.
actually, first of all, that's not the item on the agenda, this is just part of it, but I almost believe associate members may be private firms, engineering firms and whatnot.
Ah. And, considering that Sam is a member, we really ought to take a look at, is there sufficient benefit for us to be a member of CASA?
Well, we're supporting a group that fights, legislation and.
Well, that's true. Yeah, all right. So, in order for one of us to go, we would have had to have an agenda item here to approve it, because that kind of thing has to be approved in advance to get reimbursed. So, it doesn't sound like we're gonna be able to send anybody, so maybe it's not worth it, to do the appointments now, just wait till, next year? This
Yeah,
annual?
if you like, we can go ahead and include this such as we do for the CSBA and add it to our bylaws and have it be appointed at the time.
Yeah,
The
are there-
real issue is, do you want to have a say in who's voted
Voting,
as a
yeah.
CASA director?
But we could only vote in person.
Yeah, but that's only if you want to be reimbursed, right? So like say, if I want to do it and I went, didn't seek reimbursement,
True,
relayed the information back,
true.
then in that case,
Yeah.
I mean, is there a,
Could they approve?
So
something like
are you suggesting you might go on your own?
I guess that was gonna be the first thing, is there do we know if there's a fee to go to the,
There
is it a
is-
conference, it's not a meeting?
Yeah, it's just, they have it's only one night, and I don't know what the actual cost is. There was a brochure that we distributed in the unagenda correspondence. I can pull it real quick and find out, but they're usually right around 400 to 500 for the actual conference, and then.
So there's a conference fee?
Yeah,
to-
usually, yeah, there's always a conference. I can find out what it is.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, it seems like, I think I remember this before, we didn't, we weren't too involved. I mean, I'd be interested in looking into that, without committing to it.
Sure.
If, I could go up there and take care of all that.
I believe our bylaws cover an after-the-fact approval, so.
I don't remember, but I thought some state law, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, requires approval in advance.
I think our bylaws have a clause for,
Well, I think if you wanted to send someone here, maybe, I think you could prove him being the, whatever it is, district representative, and approve sending him to make our vote in Monterey.
On page 229, consent to electronic transmission, the second paragraph says, if you have electronic transmission, they can send you meeting notices, ballots, conduct meetings, and handle other official business that requires member or board approval. And then the last sentence, it also allows you to send the same types of information to CASA via electronic transmission. So maybe you don't have to do that.
Where does it
no,
say?
you do have to attend the conference. I confirm that, to cast a vote.
Oh.
The authorization form is to allow them to send out the information, that's all it is. But again, you have to be present at the conference in Monterey, and I spoke with someone on the phone there. That's the only way you can vote.
But they will send you ballots, and you can send,
Right.
and you can send them back.
Well, That's not what they said. They said that it could be for other information or something, I don't know, but they said that in order to cast a ballot for the election that they have for their members, you have to be present.
The agenda item is to
Point
approve
of
a
rep.
voting representative and 2 alternates, and then the staff report describes that the members will be asked to vote on a resolution, blah, blah, blah. Voting may be done only by representatives attending the conference, so it seems to me that as part of this, you can authorize expenditure. But I share your concern, I mean, I think the board could tentatively approve it, and we can confirm it. Because I think you're right, AB 1, 2, 3, 4 does have some limitations, but we can confirm that independently, but if the board authorizes it, then we confirm that.
Well, if you think we could actually approve the attendance under this agenda item, then it's a non-issue.
I think you could.
Okay. So, given that, David, it sounds like you're interested in attending.
Yeah, I'm, you know, I'll be the member and look into whatever we can, and then, you know, if I get feedback that, you know, based on whatever you guys say, but I'd be open, you know, I think it's a short enough drive where.
Does anyone want to be the 2 alternates then?
I don't think I can take the time
Well, I
at this
think
point.
we'd probably just pick 2, and you don't have
I
to
mean,
all
I'll
do
be
it.
an alternate.
Right.
I
Just don't have
can't go to
if you
this,
don't
who
want to.
knows?
Right.
I move to designate David as our official voting representative to CASA,
And to authorize his attendance at this meeting.
to authorize his attendance at the
With
August
reimbursement.
10th meeting.
Yeah, can we do both of those in one motion?
Probably better.
Yeah.
I'll let you.
All right.
And then can you, Delia, would you be able to get back to me tomorrow with the details on registration and if?
And I will
if-
confirm.
Yeah, if you can confirm.
All right, is there a second?
Second,
Does anybody want to amend the motion to add alternate voting reps?
I'll amend the motion to add. Who's the other person who's going to be the alternate, or just me?
Just the name, Matthew, throw your name in the hat.
Matthew.
You don't have to go, they just need it. They
okay,
require it.
okay.
With Matthew Clark and Barbara
It's-
Diaz.
Key part is I don't have to go, okay.
All right.
Although that's a lovely place.
Who was the second?
Matthew?
You accept the amendment?
Oh, yes.
Okay, those in favor of approving the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Who was the mover and the seconder?
I think it was Barbara and Matthew.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that was unanimous? Okay. Item 8. Oh, and we're gonna sign the part for receiving electronic communications?
Yeah.
Do you have a general email address that's not specific to a staff member?
I usually give out mine, but sometimes we just give out the GCSD, or they ask for all of them, so we give them to everybody.
Yeah, you might want to consider using a generic email address. Okay, item 8, consideration of district sewer authority mid-coastside report. Would you like to say anything, Mr. Chairman?
Why don't you lead here, like,
Oh, Sam is just so much fun these days.
Anyway,
Well, I have a comment, which is that it's not consistent. This says that there's, as a motion passed, that the monthly bank balance information be included in all, but the reports, and in our minutes, it says that they were not interested in that suggestion.
This happened, I
Different
caught
dates.
that same
Different
thing, and
dates.
this happened after that meeting.
Yeah.
After our
Oh,
meeting,
okay.
this is 4 days after our meeting that this passed.
I see,
But
okay.
Then Leonard also said, he's got the same packet for next meeting?
No, I don't.
Oh, I
No, I
thought,
said that.
oh.
How do you have?
And it wasn't in there?
Yeah, and the monthly bank balance account information's not in there apparently, so.
The life statement.
The life statement's in there, but the life statement is usually in there, the bank balance account or a balance sheet is in there.
And one more comment, which is page 241. I personally think this is completely ridiculous to have in minutes. General Counsel Nelson discussed the 3 things not agreed upon between the member agency's attorneys. A discussion ensued. That tells that is not a record of what happened. That's
I have given up trying to get the SAM minutes to be useful.
They
There's
really
So what
no
were the 3
point.
things?
Well,
that's-
it seems though, Leonard, they gave you some extra power, because on page 240, it says, following discussion, Director Warren moved and Director Warren seconded
Oh, I missed
the
that.
motion.
I missed that.
So now you can move and second. Good.
No kidding.
Are we gonna go into Sam typos where your Monday meeting was listed, approved the collections agreement for a 3-year term? And they just switched it to 1 year?
I made a decision a number of years ago that I was not going to even point out typos in the SAM minutes, that I would only mention it if it was a material error.
There's one. I have a question, also on 241, B, the top. Petition control list, what is that?
Position control list, basically a list of authorized employees and what their job titles are.
It's actually yoga moves you're not allowed to do at work.
But yeah, position control list.
Our
You
policies
hey,
are
you can't
restricted
stand like
to
that.
Sams. I
Oh.
asked that same question at a meeting, and Magda Gonzalez laughed at herself, and she said, that's what we bureaucrats call, the people working at your place.
Oh, so it's not,
So,
I thought
yes.
it must be like, oh, you can't do that job because you're not on the petition
No.
control list in that position, right?
No, I'm pretty sure it's just a list of
It is a list
authorized,
of the
authorized
operator
slots.
4, operator 3, general manager, that
Right.
kind of stuff.
Hmm,
I literally did ask that same question.
okay.
But yeah, discuss the 3 things not agreed upon, and
No.
doesn't say what they are.
Well, and the really comical part, the 3 there that weren't agreed upon, actually were agreed upon to that thing. There were minor niggles that they still had to deal with, so. The big issue with Sam, and I don't know if you guys have any different opinion, you two, but the real issue is obviously the collections agreement with Half Moon Bay. And we thought we were ready to have it approved at the June 25th meeting, then I thought we were gonna do it, so we obviously, at the July 9th meeting. So, I'll say this, and I've talked to Leonard about this after the meeting, trying to figure out what happened at the meeting, why we didn't approve it. There's a lot of pressure from other sides, obviously, and whatnot. I think we talked about at our last meeting that we were ready to approve the collections, Sam to approve the collections agreement with Half Moon Bay, and subject to that, we will be following up with our own agreement. We are now, based on Half Moon Bay's actions at their Tuesday meeting, where they approved shortening the agreement to the 1 year, they agreed to flow allocation of all the insurance deductibles, which was a $1,700 item that they discussed for about 30 minutes, because no one had that number at the SAM meeting. One of the more frustrating things is watching a SAM meeting and watching it, and just wanting to go, we're talking about $1,700 out of a $930,000 budget, but I
But
can't.
as I keep reminding Chuck, what's worse than watching the SAM board meetings is being there.
Right. So anyway, Half Moon Bay at their last council meeting approved, as Sam's concerned, a 1-year agreement instead of a 3-year agreement, and they approved allocating that money based on a flow percentage, which was one of Montera's issues at the last meeting. So I am strongly recommending that you all approve, and I think that your board should have input of this as well, approve the Half Moon Bay collections agreement, especially since, while the attorneys got down into the weeds about liabilities, which is $1,700, all this other kind of stuff, my big issue was always, what happens in year 2, where the schedule said we're cutting our cleaning in half and their revenues drop from $930 to $585. The 1-year agreement takes care of that. Basically what the 1-year agreement does is it gives us time to figure out what we're gonna do in years 2 and 3 and how we're gonna do it intelligently rather than these 2-week deadlines at SAM where people are going at the
Yeah,
last minute.
I will
This is not
report-
on tonight's agenda.
No, this is part of the SAM, we can't,
Sorry.
we can't, we
Oh.
can't direct by motion, if you will, how Leonard and Jim vote, but I just wanted to impress upon you, and this is not just coming from me, it's coming from Bill and Jonathan, that we're at the point now where I think we should, SAM board approve setting out this proposal, Half Moon Bay's done what they can. I think we do it and move forward. I think it's best for all 3 agencies, because if we don't, things are gonna blow up again. It doesn't hurt
Yeah.
us by approving it.
And I think it was made really clear to Montera that they need to get this dealt with. They've had, or their council has had, has been unavailable, is all I can really say publicly. And they need to deal with it, they can't make it everybody else's problem. And so I think at this point, whether or not Montera is ready to approve it, we should be ready to approve it.
The rest of the board concur with that? I think, you know, especially if Leonard and Jim can go into the SAM meeting and say, hey, my board heard all this stuff and they want us to approve this, because you're gonna get pushback, obviously.
Well, I tried to approve it in the last meeting, but the Montana pushed back on that.
Right. And they're gonna, I think they're gonna push back again, because remember, you know, Dave Stricker just got permission to review it, and they're not meeting again until September.
Okay, well,
So you're gonna be at the SAM meeting in whatever, 3 or 4 days from now, and they're not gonna have any change in position, so.
But he could still have communicated it to them outside of a board meeting.
Right. I'm going under the assumption it's not gonna happen from their side, so.
Well, it's not necessarily in our best interest to piss off either Granada or either Montera or Half Moon Bay. But it really puts us in a tough spot. I think that it's appropriate to approve it. You know, even though Montera's gonna be annoyed with us if they're not ready to approve it, I think that we really have to.
What's Montera's biggest gripe about it?
Well, the interesting part is when they first considered this at the SAM May 9th meeting, they were ready to rubber stamp it. They were, as I've said before, yelling at Leonard saying, why are you holding this up? It's between Half Moon Bay. Leonard had very good reasons why we were holding it up, which we've worked out over the past 2 or 3 months. Their biggest thing at the last meeting was that they hadn't reviewed it, and there was this talk about, you know, their lawyer hadn't reviewed it. Now, he had been on all the email strings, and at some point in time, he dropped off, I think maybe due to health reasons or something. But, you know, Jonathan worked really hard getting this through, as did I. We're working, massaging the things, doing what we have to do to bring everyone together. And, you know, like Leonard said, just because they can't come to the table, there's no good reason for this thing not to be approved now, especially with this 1 year, because that was the biggie. Again, that was the big deal. Now that's okay, so, you know, straw poll, you would all agree
Yes,
to
Yes,
approval?
I mean, we can't,
for 1 year.
it's not
Yeah,
really
for
on
1
the
year.
agenda, so we
Yeah.
can't really.
Well,
Well, we're
but,
not making a motion, it is part of the agenda, because it is in the SAM
But I
packet, and that's what this is for.
but I think the item
But we
on-
can't direct them anyway, so
Yeah.
you couldn't take a motion to direct them. I just want to give them moral support
is,
when it hits the fan.
is the item on the SAM agenda to authorize the SAM manager to sign the agreement, or sign the agreement indicating 1 year one way or another? How is it written?
The
on
title of the
agenda?
SAM agenda?
Yeah.
It says 3 years in it. Now, I've already emailed them correcting it, saying, hey, guys, I think you meant 1 year, so. So, Jim, if that comes up, you're the
Okay.
chair, so.
Now, in regards to Chuck's concerns about what happens in year 2, I have to report to this board that I've asked that multiple times, and I think it would be fair to say that the question was completely ignored.
Well, I asked it when Beverly was here at this meeting, how do you lose 300 and some odd $1,000 in revenue? You know, kind of we'll figure out how we do that when it happens.
So are you thinking of, at least, even if you're not actually working on it yet, are you thinking of
Yes.
what we're gonna do if Half Moon Bay follows through with their threat to
Well,
go elsewhere?
yeah, the benefit to having this thing approved is John Dowdy realizes, and he said this to his city council, this will give us time to figure out what we're gonna do in year 2. They rattled some sabers and said, you know, they're gonna negotiate hard with Mark Thomas to bring them on next year. Like I said, I think Debbie Penrose said, okay, let's back off on that a little. I think she was more placating the situation or whatnot.
So do you know anything about Mark Thomas? Is that
I
any
don't.
company we might be interested in?
Mark Thomas's thing was always weird. Again, part of this is the frustration of Half Moon Bay with how their sewers are being cleaned. And as I said to somebody before, they were frustrated with Sam's staff, and now they have frustrations with the board not approving it. You know, Mark Thomas is a layer above Roto-Rooter or someone like that. So they would literally hire Roto-Rooter to clean their lines, and Mark Thomas would be a management consultant above it. It was not cheaper than Sam, but, you know, if you're paying 300 grand a year, and you're having 5 spills a year, and they're not doing this what you want and that what you want, that's why they're doing it, you know. Sometimes you have to pay the money to get what you want. As I've said before, Sam's performance has really improved in the past 2 or 3 years, I think, since they got that big Vector cleaning truck. So there's still issues there with management and how they're structured, but hopefully that can all be worked out.
Do you think that any of it relates to what's seriously past history at this point? When Dennis Coleman was on the council, he was making a big deal out of the fact that for many, many years they had spent approximately nothing on upgrading their sewer infrastructure, and then they brought in a sewer engineer, I don't remember his name, who...
What are you talking about, Half Moon Bay?
Yeah, and so Half Moon Bay ended up throwing something like $6 million at it in 1 year to try and catch up. But is there any possibility that their system is still problematic?
No, but again, because it's like I was talking about before with the CIP. If you have problems with a line, you clean it more. You know, I could make a strong argument, and I won't, that you could do more cleaning and less CIP, be a lot more cost effective.
Except that I've heard the Ocean Colony lift station was built wrong and in the wrong location, but other than that, there's no problem.
Right, and every pump, and the Princeton pump station's built wrong, and it's confined space entry, and on and on and on. Every pump station's built wrong.
Yeah,
If they did it all now, they'd have big wide open spaces and submersible pumps, and no one would have to go down there. But I've got 12 pump stations at my thing where the guys travel down basically a glorified can 25 feet down in an elevator. So no one would design that now, especially not with ocean and all that stuff, and they're slowly being swapped out. But I don't know what the truth is. It doesn't. Half Moon Bay was frustrated. They took these moves. Hopefully good things will come out of it. We'll work with them to try and make sure good things come out of it.
So where are we with our new contract?
So we've got the base contract now, and Jonathan and I and Bill will endeavor to have that, we will have it on the August agenda.
August SAM agenda.
Our agenda. Well, I guess maybe both, I don't know, whatever the timing is. We'll have it on our August agenda.
So you put in a lot of time and work to write a contract that we're hoping Half Moon Bay will sign.
No, that we will both use as a basis. That's why we put the effort in.
As a basis.
Yeah, and we also wanted to make sure that the contract they signed didn't hurt us in some way. That was most of the effort. But then at the end, you know, at the end when Jonathan made 8 or 10 comments, I think the Half Moon Bay lawyer had the same thing I was thinking, but, you know, that's our issues we're dealing with. So.
Now, you really need to go over this with Beverly because she was really hard on me about how can she consider a contract that was set up without any involvement with her.
Well, the contract itself has been involved with Sam. They've been negotiating with Half Moon Bay, so the contract itself will be parroting that. The scope of work, I will endeavor to parrot as much as Half Moon Bay as possible, but yeah, we're not gonna do this in a vacuum. At the end of the day, it's gonna be an agreement between ourselves and Sam, and they have to sign off at a staff level, so.
Okay,
yeah.
so are we really having our whole system cleaned every year?
Yes.
Oh, because I, for some reason, thought that you had decided that some segments need more and some segments need less.
Yes, I had, but that's part of the back and forth, getting information from Sam, having them tell us what segments need to be cleaned and what don't. And they kept turning to us and saying, you tell us. I kept saying, I'm not the boots on the ground. That's part of the reason Half Moon Bay hired Mark Thomas to analyze that kind of stuff and produce a plan.
Because it seems to me that it makes sense to figure out how often each segment or area needs to be done and not do it
Yes,
excessively.
and when we've talked about this, we keep hearing the member agencies wanted all segments cleaned every year. And I said, I've been here 15 years and never said that, but that's part of what we're trying to resolve now, and I hope we can. Again, that's why Half Moon Bay got Mark Thomas involved. So.
Okay, so let's see if there's anything else.
So you got your vote of confidence?
Yes. And it's 1 year. I checked, it's 1 year.
So, what you see on the SAM agenda for July 9th, item 7E, we didn't get to that due to lack of time, so that'll probably come back soon if it's not on the next agenda. Sam is looking at increasing the director's compensation for each day of service, since it hasn't been adjusted since, like, I don't know, 2002 or something? Forget. When John Berg was the interim GM is when it was last adjusted.
And yeah.
And that was long enough ago that I've actually forgotten what year it was.
I wouldn't even guess.
Hmm?
I wouldn't even guess what year.
It was 2002.
So how much do we want to dive into the audit issues?
If you want to dive in, you can.
I think we should wait till the audit comes out.
At least.
And so it turns out that Sam implemented a new, what would you call it, GL?
No, an accounting system, entire accounting system.
A new accounting system, and didn't run in parallel. And there's a ledger entry that has everybody confounded. The auditor is tearing his hair out because they go and they try and fix this error over here by making a tweak over there, and then the whack-a-mole pops up over here.
Same number. Same.
Yeah, no matter what they tweak, it pops up somewhere, but it's always the same number.
Interesting.
And so they're getting the software vendor involved because it might be a bug, but it's a real mess.
It's the Russians. Just making a joke. I'm trying to stay awake.
Don't give them any idea.
Mueller shows up in your SAM meeting,
It's not
watch
such
out.
it's not such a joke. I've seen articles in the last 2 days about how many water systems and electric systems in this country have been hacked.
Yeah.
And you know what? If it was up to me, every general manager of such a company would spend time in jail. And then the problem would go away. They don't spend enough money on security, and that would fix the problem.
Anyway.
And I do have some amount of a specialty in computer security. Okay, anything else on these agendas that we need to report on?
All right.
So with the audit, the auditor's just been going back and forth, being open about the issue, but hasn't issued any final report or anything?
It's, the auditor is really reluctant to complete the audit until they can nail down that discrepancy that keeps moving around.
Being an auditor, you wanna have everything reconciled, and you can't reconcile.
Yeah.
Okay, if it's not a bug in the software, what's?
We don't know that it's a bug.
Because I feel like that's,
Nobody knows what the problem is yet.
Maybe an entry. For the person, I don't know.
And
Weird, it's the same number.
they're saying that it probably has something to do with the fact that they had a number of different temps doing these things, and one of the temps entered something over here that should have been entered over there, but it seems to me that you just back out that and put in the right thing, and I don't know.
No, the one set of people didn't use the double entry system of accounting, which is the very basis of
Right.
accounting. And it screwed up their thing, and it makes you wonder why we're allowing that. But
Well, it's seriously making me question why we approved a ton of money for that new system when I never really heard exactly what was wrong with QuickBooks, which many, many agencies use. And lots of people understand how to work it.
including our own.
Yeah. All right, so I guess we're gonna declare that one done.
Yeah.
And consent agenda. I think give me a second here, I think I had some, I don't know if I should hold the minutes for discussion or just ask these two questions on.
Ask the questions.
Action agenda item 1, says resident Nancy Marsh should, I don't remember the context she gave for her comments. Should she be identified as a PAC member?
No,
Okay, and under committee reports, I suggested a future agenda item for a letter of opposition to AB 337. I can't find that on our agenda here.
where was that letter? Oh, committee reports.
Near the bottom of 255. So, could you check and
Which
see
was
if,
the one David was talking about? Was that one?
no, AB 337, oh, maybe that is it, the 337 are redevelopment agencies.
He
So-
talked about two.
So if that bill hasn't passed yet, I still want an agenda item for us to consider a letter opposing it.
Can you look
And
into
if we have the agenda item, I'll go into detail as to why we should oppose it.
All right, so
But
we'll take a look at it.
you need to make sure it's not moved by our next
David,
agenda.
did you send Delia that stuff about these bills? Do you remember?
I sent her, I don't think that was in there. I'll go back and send it
Well,
electronically.
you can take a look.
Okay,
Let
'cause
him-
I sent her a bunch of
All
stuff,
right. Okay.
I don't know if that was in there.
So on the warrant report, there's a line item for credit card charges, and I made an issue out of this at Sam. Can we get in the packet with the warrants, a line item detail of what's charged to the credit card?
Okay.
All right, so if nobody wants to hold anything for discussion, do we have a motion to approve item 9, June 21st, 2018 meeting minutes? Item 10, July 2018 warrants for $193,513.87. Item 11, May 2018 financial statements. Item 12, approval of assessment district distribution number 1-18/19.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, no discussion, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. Item 13, report on seminars, conferences, or committee meetings. Hearing none. Item 14, report on,
I wanted to briefly mention as in the Parks Committee report that we've been talking about the picnic tables. And we had a request from a community member to do something about the picnic tables.
2, actually.
Yeah. The picnic table selection will be on the Park Committee agenda for September. So K&K already knows they're gonna provide some options. There's a lot of options. I mean, I had to pick out picnic tables for a big development project, you know, so we're gonna do that. It's gonna happen in September, and then we'll be ready to get
Are you
them.
gonna go to that meeting?
Yes.
Can you pass on my thought that the only thing we should consider is that recycled plastic that's heavier than wood? Because
I think-
it's essentially indestructible.
I think that is a very good option. That's in fact what I chose when I was choosing them. But I would like to see the options there. I don't want to tell the park committee, here, you can look at these, but this is what we want you to do. Then why would we bother to have them do it?
Yeah, well, we can, you know, if the board feels like it, we can always override their
Yeah, yeah.
recommendation, but,
And
you know,
then,
if you could pass on,
that's, yeah, okay. I
that's
can do
a
that.
thought from one director.
Okay. Also, in the interim, there's really, if someone made the case that there are some issues with at least one of them that's there being, you know, having sharp pieces exposed, that we could get them removed. And I know staff was gonna talk to Recology and see if we could get them taken out. And I don't think we should take them away unless absolutely we put up a sign that says, we're taking these out, let us know, you know, we're gonna be talking about this at the Parks Committee meeting, let us know where you'd like, you know, so people know that we didn't just take out the picnic table, that the process is happening.
So you think we can just stick a half-inch stick in the ground with a?
Yeah. Printed sign on
Sign
it,
on
yeah.
it?
Well, how dangerous are the picnic tables?
I think one
I
of them
don't
is
think-
seriously dangerous, the
Yeah.
other ones are just unusable.
Yeah.
And I just asked a question my lawyers always told me never to ask. in
Right,
open
I was
session.
surprised.
At least I recognized it.
But until we
What's our
put,
I
liability?
say, see how careful I was to talk about, I didn't use the word dangerous. I talked about issues.
until we put
You're
new
the high
ones
side.
in, it's still the county's responsibility, right?
Yes, or even-
We'll go with that.
What's,
Actually, they are.
Yeah.
Good point.
where's this dangerous one?
I don't remember, but basically one or both of us are just gonna have to walk up there with Delia and evaluate each one.
So do we know if Recology is willing to help remove them?
I don't know. no.
Okay, well, let's hope we can make some progress on that.
Well, they do have a bin up there for tossing in unpainted, untreated wood.
Yeah, I asked Delia about this because I assumed they were loose. I guess they're not loose. They're
No.
attached to the ground.
They're very
So I
attached.
assumed,
They've
yeah.
been there 100 years.
Okay.
So we may have to,
We're gonna have to hire somebody then.
yeah,
Yeah,
maybe we
Recology
can put
can't.
it on our next agenda,
I
just
thought,
to have
I
a
thought they
brief
were just
discussion.
loose and Recology could run a bin up and throw them in. So-
Okay, but sometime before, you know, far enough before the next agenda, can one or both of us
Sure.
meet with Delia and just go survey them all?
Absolutely.
And then she can put something in the staff report based on
Okay.
what we decide.
Or those redwood plants, I bet somebody would want those.
Yeah, I would not.
I mean, could the other ones, because I know a lot of people did mention that, could the other ones that aren't the one that's a safety hazard be repaired? And either, well, whether we, you know, is
I-
that even a possibility?
I would have liked that, but I think that in many cases, the 100-year-old rails, looks like it's built with leftover railroad track, the rails are so corroded that it looks like a lost cause. I mean, when you see holes in the rail,
And if we're going to have picnic tables in various places, we should probably just, for consistency, so that we have, you know, so it's easy to repair and so forth. we
Yeah,
should
unless
get-
we're doing it for nostalgia, as I keep encouraging you all, spend some money on parks, get it
Yeah.
done right.
and come to think of it, we should have a little plate attached to all the new ones that says,
Property of,
and, well, something like that. In one way or another, the district name and
Provided
contact
by,
information.
right. All right, I mean, there are issues around what we get. It's not just a question of going to Home Depot and
Right.
picking up some
Those-
lightweight.
So we'll hear
picnic tables.
from
So
PAC.
we'll take it to the PAC. K&K has already agreed, because this was going to be something they were going to be looking at for the 7 and 8 median report anyway. So they agreed to do that first, since we are eager to get the picnic table issue resolved. I just wanted to give that sort of action report. But I don't want to take out the picnic tables without having a sign there that says,
Yeah,
yeah, don't worry, we're not just taking these away.
Yeah, the two on Balboa between Francisco and Alhambra there, in Coronado, get used.
Yeah.
I know, I
Okay,
pick
good.
up trash up there, at those things almost every day.
Great.
And, yeah, something for you guys to think about is maybe leaving them there, because Leonard pointed out somewhat jokingly, but you're right, they're not ours, they're the county's, at this point in time, so maybe leave them there till September, maybe we can see light at the end of the tunnel and
Yeah.
just swap them out.
Well, any
think
that are
that's fine.
usable
We're
should
going to
certainly be
try.
left there.
Yeah. Just one other thing in terms, I guess this comes under parks, which is that, they just had a settlement of a case, sounded like a horrible case where, I think it was a county campground and a tree limb fell down on a tent, and it was a $47 million settlement
Oh, yeah.
in favor of the kid, which means, puts government jurisdictions, we don't know if they had recently added that camping site, but I doubt it. The responsibility for tree health and maintaining tree health where people have recreation. In the past, it's always been that if you didn't change anything, you didn't have an obligation to do that kind of thing, but it sounds as if the law.
I actually picked up the phone and called Jonathan when I read that article.
Yeah.
So,
But that, I mean, that's all the county, right? Anything that's a safety hazard tree-wise
Until
is
we do
still the
something.
Well,
county's.
and it's why we keep, and this kind of reminded me of Dale Ross's comments about, I didn't quite follow it, because I don't know where he's talking about, but building a pond and things like that. Number one, 6-inch pond is just perfect for people drowning, but number two, we also have to keep in mind what that agreement says. It doesn't
Right.
allow us to put a pond on the median, and we also have to be careful. I keep hearing people use the word tree management plan.
Yeah.
Stay away. That's not our business. It's the county's trees, it's the county's median.
we can't afford to take on tree
Yeah,
management.
and we just don't want to. We can't afford $47 million.
So can we get, assuming that enough of the board wants this, can we get a report from council on state law? Because there's some conditions where parks and rec districts are immune by state law from certain kinds of clams. And so if we could get a report that basically summarizes what immunity we have under various state laws, I think that'd be useful. So, everybody interested in getting that?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe in that $47 million settlement, they had 2 arborist reports saying that tree was dangerous. So,
See, that's.
Oh, did they? I didn't read
I
that.
think so, yeah, and there are arborist reports for these trees, so we need those.
We have them. I have
Oh.
copies of
Well,
From the county?
the ones that the county ordered
Uh-huh,
for the very beginning of the PAC committee.
oh, good.
But there's not a whole lot to them.
They don't go tree by tree, but,
Yeah, actually, one of them does.
how,
But they say all the trees are, one of the medians are dangerous and should be taken out. One of them is.
That
and
may be true.
one of the medians has a scar that you can see on Google Earth where the county took out all the trees 15 years ago and never replaced a single one.
Yeah, it's right below me.
How,
Right, I think we should have a Parks Committee meeting. It's really late, so I don't. think we
Yeah,
should.
and I was
Yeah.
gonna talk about that in future
Yeah.
agenda items,
in,
so.
in terms of our agreement with the county, how solid is the agreement in terms of whose responsibility the trees are?
As I remember, the trees are the county's responsibility until we do something to alter them. There was a big issue of contention when we signed that agreement, so.
Okay,
And then the definition if we improve the trail underneath them.
Right.
But this is for another agenda.
all right, so was that under 13 or 14?
That was under committee reports. As part of the Parks Committee of the
14.
All right, so I'm
Parks
gonna assume
Advisory.
we don't have a report from Parks Advisory Committee? Okay.
They didn't recently meet, right?
No.
No,
They
They're
they
not
don't meet
meeting
until
till
next month,
September.
yeah.
September.
And I asked if they could speed it up, and no, they can't.
Okay. Item 15, Attorney's Report, which still says Whitworth.
No report from Mr. Whitworth.
Item 16, General Manager's Report from Charles.
Nothing further, Charles.
Has everybody noticed that Chuck's email header changed?
They changed it back.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Item 17, administrative staff report.
I'd just like to mention that we received notice that our lease payment is going to be issued to a new party. There's a new property manager, and so I voided the check that was on our warrants to Working Dirt. I have been instructed by both the new and the old property managers to issue a check for August, which we're paying to the new property manager. So I've done that, and I just want to
So,
mention it.
so you're saying Working Dirt has explicitly confirmed
Yes,
that with you?
yes.
Because, you know, we all know about those kind of scams.
Well, and we also have, no, it's been confirmed, we also have a court order that was also included with that, so.
Also, what?
There was a court order attached to it, it's, yeah, so anyways. just
As I
wanted-
read it, they're in chapter,
I don't
chapter
know.
11. I think.
Are they?
I don't know, that's what I, when you said the stuff in here, that seemed like it was true,
Yeah,
whatever.
I'm not sure.
Well, maybe they should have chosen a better name. Item 18, engineers report, which for somehow is way in the front of the packet under some budget thing. Or is that?
No,
or-
that's a different.
Well, that
The
was,
only thing written by John.
No, that was,
Right up front.
that was a Meteor Creek report from 2 years, but I will give the quick update on Meteor Creek. John, remember we had the two options, and John's pursuing both, because he and I had discussions about if they build this new bridge, we may be able to make a safe crossing. He's still talking with the county about that, but he's also still pursuing that easement across State Parks lands, and we actually have some movement on that. So he's made contact with them, they've been going back and forth. The woman at State Parks said they're putting it into the system, she said it may take several months. I wrote back, well, better than several years, I thought. And no, I didn't, by the way. But she said this will take several months to wend its way through the process, but the good news is it's in the process, wending its way through, so we're making progress.
yeah, I think it's worth waiting on that, because obviously, my preference would be to not have any crisscrossing.
Absolutely, but we're just keeping, you know, in case, better to pursue both, it's cheap to pursue both. If one
Yeah.
falls through, we got the other, so.
Can we get a dry pipe on the bridge as an emergency backup?
John's working that out with the people, so, because that was our other thought too, keep it over, because that is our emergency bypass.
Yeah.
So,
I think that'd be good to have the dry pipe
Yeah.
there that's
it's cheap.
earmarked for us
It's cheap
only.
insurance.
Yeah. 19, future agenda items.
So, your board is interested in scheduling a future parks only meeting, so I think everyone's kind of back from their vacations, so, you know, we've got our next meeting is, Jim, can you see August 16, yeah. So, would you like to have one before or after that, you know, a week before, a week after? Would you like Delia to send out a couple dates for the week before, a week after, on email, and you can check your schedules?
We got a meeting here.
The week before is design review, but on the other hand, our procedures for other groups using the room says that we always have priority.
Well, that starts at 1:30.
Yeah, it often goes for 6 or 7 hours.
Oh, that's a good point.
What's this week?
And Thursday is the best for everyone still?
Posting the outcomes.
Yep.
Okay. So should we tentatively shoot for the 23rd?
There is a group in there,
Posting the outcomes.
maybe 30th?
Oh, I don't think those have dentists have any.
Oh,
Oh, no, those are the progressive, that's Sabrina. That's not Coastside Democrats.
Progressive, oh, I think the progressive, sorry.
Yeah.
And this is-
So then the 30th? Is that too late?
30th, I think, yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Wait.
Do you, yeah, so,
Yeah, that'll work.
okay,
Tentative, yeah.
so we'll send something.
And then we're just gonna start giving
If
you
you guys
some-
have ideas for
I think,
agenda
yeah,
items.
I mean, I feel like there's so many.
Send it to Delia and me, and we'll circulate a draft agenda a couple weeks before. and-
Yeah, I think some could go on forever, some I think, you know, one of the things I keep getting emailed about, people keep sending videos of on the big beach weekends when people pile up the trash and then the offshore winds come in and blow all the trash people piled up into the ocean. And just the need that, whether they're,
Well,
I know he
yeah.
emailed back and forth, And it was kind of interesting is part of his email back and forth from Recology kind of exposed to me kind of the bigger issue of kind of the, you know, the unincorporated areas is, you know, you got Half Moon Bay owning the beaches, us doing the trash, Harbor District right there, police doing enforcement of any littering and things like that. And none of us, without having a community council, you know, a city council, none of us meet as agencies. And so, and it almost, you know, with some of these issues that require overlap of multiple agencies, to me, it's like, you know, we meet as SAM, you know, regularly, you know, and even if it was once a quarter or twice a year or whatever, representatives from each of these agencies coming together, you know, once or twice a year at a minimum, and meeting to talk about some of these
yeah.
traffic, trash, things like that that overlap. Because otherwise, it's just kind of, there's only so much you can do in terms of, you know.
Well, I think we've got to figure out how to resolve the trash issue.
Yeah.
And we have to work with these other people to help us get there. Like you had said, I think in one of your emails, if the Harbor District guys are out there, maybe they could do interim, you know, just that kind of dialogue. So, yeah. We have to figure.
Isn't that what Mid-Coast Community Council is for?
You know, partially, but, you know, I mean, they're another
thing's a weird
agency
thing.
that.
You know, I didn't believe this till Chris Porter told me this 5 years ago with another thing in Princeton. You put a can there,
Yeah.
and people will pile it out. People won't just drive by and throw a bag of trash on the beach, most people. But if you got a can, they'll put one next to it and next to it and next to it, before it becomes a dump.
And there are.
Kind of interesting.
There are people, and you can research this easily on the net, there are people that believe that the solution to that problem is just remove the trash cans. And there are some pretty persuasive arguments to that line. Now, I suggested to Chuck that we look at doing, I saw signs in Hong Kong, basically on every single street corner trash can that say it's a violation of the law to leave anything on the ground next to the trash can.
I'd just like to make a note that Chris Porter is going to be having some signs made that we're going to attach to the Surfers Beach cans that say pack it in, pack it out. It was her suggestion, and I told her as long as we could attach it to something that's already out there, we can't put a post in the ground or anything like that, but, so she was gonna work on
But
it.
I think you should also put up a sign that Chuck can point to the district ordinance code section number. The sign should cite that, saying it is illegal to leave anything on the ground next to this trash can.
Yeah, and I went back and forth, just so you know, we've actually been discussing this with Jonathan and Bill's office there. So they dragged out the ordinance we passed. Natalie takes pleasure in reminding me of things I've forgotten about 2 years ago, so.
But no, but I mean,
So
that's where I feel like.
We have all that stuff. He had done a whole bunch of research on the non-parking signs, which he sent to me. So we've got all that stuff, so when we have this parks
Yeah.
only meeting, we've got a bunch of information for you all.
But no, I mean, I think that's a good point about that, and that's where I think even the multiple agencies, you know, because the next step with that is citing the, you know, that it's illegal, and then 1 weekend of enforcement would do wonders in terms of getting out the word, even for locals, being like, hey, you know, people are getting cited, you know, you need to
Right.
pick this up and take it with you. It kind of gives
Get
some
the kids-
leverage.
Kids texting each other, hey, just got busted. for
Yeah,
the-"
no, I mean,
like they
seriously,
do
it would.
speeding in
I
front
mean,
of
they
my
would do,
house.
they would do the, you know, the news stories, everything.
I
so-
would take a wild guess that the problem is not primarily locals. So, are we done with future agenda?
I thought you had already adjourned us. Yes,
Well, I
so
think
we'll
we'll
be
talk
setting
about
something.
Burnham Park. on that
I'd like
first
to
committee
bring
agenda.
up,
So again, send us via email anything you want on there.
I'd like to bring up one thing. I watched last month's meeting and I read the thing, and I unfortunately only brought this page about the logs and the parking area. And it didn't make any sense to me, the numbers in that, in the memo. And the conclusion was that the board directed staff not to buy any logs, based, I guess, on those numbers
I think it was at this time.
at this time. But I looked at it and I'll find the sheet I wrote all my calculations on and talked to Delia about it. But it looked to me like that order for $10,400 was 410-foot log. That's 4,000 feet. We needed about 650 feet.
No, I'm sorry if it was confusing, but it was for 400
So it was 40 10-foot logs,
Yeah, yeah.
totaling 400 feet.
It said item 400, and over here it described them as 10-foot logs.
Oh, on her invoice you're talking about?
No, on the proposal from Firewood Farms.
Yeah, I think that must be a mistake, 'cause I don't think it was.
Was the proposal on the agenda?
Yeah, I
Right, we
provided,
can look at it
I'm
quick.
pretty sure it was, a 400 square feet total of,
Linear feet.
yeah.
Yeah, lineal.
We can look at
Yeah.
it.
But that was what we had discussed, and that's what she quoted me for.
Ah, okay,
Yeah,
no
I
wonder it
think we
didn't make
just
sense.
agreed-
It's like 200 on one side, a little over 200 on the other, so I said four, just quote me for 4, and that's, yeah,
Oh, well, yeah, but that, for only, that much, that's an outrageous cost, yeah.
yeah.
So we should talk about it again, because I was kind of surprised that we had evidently said, don't buy it. I think what we said was, you had a lead on some potentially free logs, and we wanted to see that investigated first, not that we never want to buy logs, because I think everybody wants to make this happen. So
Right, well-
we could talk about it on this later, this
Just to
next
mention,
agenda.
the ones down there that you saw, they were only 10-foot circumference, they were too small.
Okay, I was just trying to help. I saw
Yeah.
trucks cutting trees. I said,
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell
I did
Dewey.
the same thing. I
Yeah.
drove by and said, hey, there's a bunch we could use. All right,
Okay, we're adjourned.
Right.
you missed your deadline by 30 minutes. I was just saying.
And I just